Chapter 1372. When Ziying sent Hu Feng and Kong Qianqian flying with one move, the crowd exclaimed again. Hu Feng and Kong Qianqian were both students of Cui Di Feng Academy, and they were ranked first and second. How could they be sent flying with one move by an unknown person? This ranking of first and second place was too much of an exaggeration, right? At this moment, Ziying's aura had already risen. Faint starlight floated, and it seemed like a meteor was streaking across the sky. Meteor stage. One had to know that the strongest person on Wanghai planet was only at the comet stage. A meteor stage cultivator was definitely a top expert. If it was someone else, it would be fine. However, it was a 14-year-old girl. This scene completely overturned everyone's understanding. Perhaps this girl was really from the royal family of the fairy goddess empire. At this point, Ziying could no longer care about anything else. She showed her full strength. When she was besieged in the enclosure, Ziying had already killed countless poisonous creatures. She was really an arrow at the end of its flight. Moreover, she had been besieged by meteor stage demonic beasts. This was her true strength. Even the soldiers did not dare to act rashly. They all looked at Lin Zhigao. Lin Zhigao knew that the critical moment had come. If he could not subdue Ziying, today's operation would be a failure. If he failed, Lin Yunfei's granduncle would not let him go. Although they were all disciples of the Lin family, there were too many of them. There had been infighting over the years, so it was normal for two people to die. Therefore, he had to win this battle. Lin Zhigao stood up and pointed at Ziying. Ziying, I don't care who you are. Since you dare to behave so atrociously here, you have no respect for the Lin family. No matter what, you must be killed today. Soldiers, listen up. Yes, for the glory of the Lin family, for the glory of the divine ancestor Lin Zhan, there is someone here who dares to challenge the Lin family. Let's attack together. Today, no matter the price, we must eliminate this person. Remember, we want him dead, not alive. Yes, sir. Under Lin Zhigao's encouragement, everyone stood up. Although Ziying was a meteor stage demonic beast, there were many meteors here, such as Hu Zheng, Kong Feng, and the vice principal. With so many experts attacking at the same time, even if Ziying was Lu Zhou, she would not be a match for them. The result would be the same as in the enclosure, being exhausted and defeated. Ziying's expression also changed. She did not expect Lin Zhan to use Lin Zhigao's name to incite people to attack. She was in danger now. How dare you? I am Emperor Zi Qinxia. Ziying shouted and immediately took out a lot of evidence to prove it. Among them were her personal weapons, information about her influence, and even information about her cultivation method, as well as the process of her turning into a little girl. This was enough to prove her identity. However, Lin Zhigao waved his hand and said, "So what if you were Zi Qinxia? The new territories are still under the control of the Lin family. Anyone who opposes the Lin family should be destroyed. Let's go." The people of planet Wanghai did not care who Ziying was. Since Lin Zhigao had given the order, they would attack. Hu Zheng, level 8 meteor. Vice Principal, level 9 meteor. Kong Feng, a meteor level 5 spirit reader, and a gold level spirit reader. The three of them took the lead and rushed out. They were determined to take down Zi Qinxia together. Since they had already attacked, they did not have any scruples. They attacked with the intention of taking her life. Zi Qinxia and the three of them fought head-on. In an instant, sparks flew and the ground shook. They thought that the three of them would be enough to deal with Ziying. However, the three of them were not able to take her down. Instead, they were at a disadvantage. Although Ziying's level was not high, she was very experienced. After all, she was a super expert who had cultivated to the god level. Dealing with the three of them was not difficult. The three of them were not as threatening to her as the monsters in the enclosure. Seeing that Ziying had the upper hand, Lin Zhigao suddenly attacked. A comet light flashed across the sky. After an intense collision, Ziying's face turned pale and she retreated. A comet-level expert. Ziying was shocked. It turned out that Lin Zhigao was the most hidden expert here. He had already reached the comet level. Lin Zhigao repelled Ziying with one move and sneered, "Emperor of the Fairy Empire, Your Majesty Zi Qinxia. I have been called Your Majesty for so many years. I am not used to being called Your Majesty. I never want to do things that I am not used to. You probably never thought that you would be defeated on this sea-gazing planet. Maybe you are still hoping that we will have some scruples. However, I advise you to give up. You will not have such an opportunity. Ziying took a deep breath and said, Bastard! Ha! Scold me. What's the use of scolding me? You're going to die soon. I'm very curious now. As a super expert, you're going to die here for a worthless mansion. Don't you regret it? Ziying looked at Lin Fan and finally spoke slowly. There's nothing to regret. When a martial artist cultivates, it's impossible to calculate everything. The reason I'm cultivating this technique is to take one step closer. This way, I can get closer to that person. But you failed. Failure is nothing. If I can't achieve my goal while alive, I might as well die. Lin Zhigao laughed and said, Good. You are indeed an infatuated woman. In that case, I will fulfill your wish. The Emperor of the Fairy Empire will fall on sea-gazing planet today. After saying that, Lin Zhigao pounced again. His blade broke through the air like a thunderbolt. Level 9 Comet. He had reached the limit of the strongest expert on sea-gazing planet. Ziying closed her eyes slightly. If it was 1,000 years ago, she could have defeated Lin Zhigao with a breath. However, she could not do so now. The Emperor, the expert, the heroine was going to die. Many people covered their eyes. They could not bear to see the beauty fade away, until a ray of light appeared out of nowhere. The little prince of the palace who was on par with the emperor, the one who had been controversial since birth, Lin Fan, who had always been regarded as trash, made his move. He crossed the boundary of space with one step and kicked out in the air. A distinct big foot was imprinted on Lin Zhigao's face. The Emperor of Dehua, the super expert of Level 9 Comet, the direct descendant of the Lin family, was kicked into the flower bed in the distance like a dead dog. Rumble. Splatter. The wall collapsed. The flower pot was broken, and Lin Zhigao's face was full of thorns, mud, and leaves. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was the Chui Di Feng Academy again. This was crazy. Only Lin Zhigao was not disappointed. Instead, he laughed and pointed at Lin Fan without caring about his injuries. You finally exposed yourself. You finally couldn't take it anymore. You are finished. You dare to beat up the descendant of the Lin family. I am the descendant of the Holy Ancestor. I am the descendant of the old ancestor Linen. You deserve to die. Even the gods can't save you. You don't know what the Lin family is, you pig. Before he could finish, Lin Fan suddenly took a step forward and stomped down again. With one foot on the Emperor's face, the guy's head was stomped into the mud on the ground. Chapter 1373. Lin Jun's action was indescribably shocking. He publicly insulted Lin and in front of so many people. There was probably no other person in the new territories who could do this. Who was Linen? He was the second son of the divine ancestor, Lin Jun. It was said that the divine ancestor loved his children very much. His 2 sons and 1 daughter were all the divine ancestor's favorite. His 2 sons had once been stranded in the primordial realm, and the sacred ancestor had killed his way into the primordial realm alone. He had turned the world upside down and beaten the monarch race to a pulp before saving his 2 sons. From this, one could see how much the sacred ancestor loved children. He must be tired of living to dare insult Linen like this. Not only did he insult Linen, but he also insulted Lin An's mother. Lin An's mother was the divine ancestor's first love. Her name was Ning. They grew up together and were deeply in love. Insulting a Ning like this was a great sin. Many people present covered their faces. It was over. Stepping on Lin Zhigao was a capital offense at best, but insulting the divine ancestor's wife and son was a crime that could be implicated. Indeed, newborn calves were not afraid of tigers and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. This might implicate others present. Lin Zhigao was still struggling under Lin Jun's foot. Lin Jun relaxed a little, and his face was covered in blood. Lin Fan, I've long suspected that there was something fishy about you. The phenomenon of the lotus protecting your body was real. It's also true that you broke the Academy's testing equipment. This time, we were testing your limits. You've been exposed. But let me tell you, no matter what your background is, you're dead this time. As Lin Jigao spoke, he looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. You're very strong, but your intelligence is too low. You dare to insult Patriarch Lin and Ning's divine ancestor. No one can save you. Don't implicate us. Someone will come to deal with you soon. At this time, Lin Xia and Yu Qingqing ran to Lin Fan's side. At this moment, they were also shocked because they could not see through the sun that they had raised for so many years. Lin Jigao was a level 9 Comet Master, but he was not a match for Lin Fan. When did his son become so strong? But that wasn't the main point right now. The main point was what Lin Fan had just said. Insulting a Ning and his mother was a capital offense. Lin Xia rushed to Lin Jin's side and took a deep look at her son, then quickly took some things out of her storage ring. Son, this is my savings for so many years. Take it with you. Also, this dimensional universe serial number belongs to an interstellar pirate. Go find him and leave Wanghai Planet on a pirate ship. Leave the very great nebula. It's best to leave the new territories and go to the primordial realm. No. Even the primordial realm is out of the question. Don't let the Lin family find you. Yu Qingqing wanted to take off all her jewelry and stuff into Lin Jin's hands. She also took back the crystal coins that Lin Xia used to bribe the vice president and told her son to leave immediately, as far as possible. Don't worry about us. Run as far away as you can. Don't ever come back. Looking at his frightened parents, Lin Jun was touched. Father, mother, you don't have to worry about anything. They can't do anything to me. Lin Jun did not care about Wanghai Planet or Lin Jigao at all. Although Lin Jigao's current realm was higher than Lin Jun's, Lin Jun had always been an expert in challenging those of a higher realm. Not to mention the comet stage. Even if it was Wei Zhou or the planet stage, Lin Jun did not care. Moreover, with Lin Jun's cultivation speed, it would not take long for him to catch up. Lin Jigao, who was lying there unable to recover, suddenly laughed. Ha. You think that just because you can beat me, no one on Wanghai Planet can do anything to you? Wrong. I've been worried about this for a long time. I've already found reinforcements. They'll be here soon. At this moment, Ziying, who was standing beside Lin Jun, suddenly changed her expression. Not good. Lin Jun looked back at her. He already knew that Ziying was Zi Qinxia. Although Ziying's cultivation method was amazing, it could not hide from Lin Jun's eye of illusion breaker. What's going on? Ziying looked at Lin Fan. She was also very suspicious of his identity. This person's current demeanor and bearing, as if he would not change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, were too similar to Lin Jun. But how could Lin Jun be here? Ziying was a little confused. However, now is not the time to talk about this. Ziying pointed to the sky. That's the Fairy Empire's battleship. Lin Jun looked up. Indeed, a battleship gradually appeared in the distance and broke through the air. This was a battleship made of eternity crystal. Lin Jun also had a spaceship like this, but he did not use it after going to the primordial realm. Now, the spaceship was still in his god realm. After Nirvana, he could not take it out. As the Fairy Empire's emperor, Ziying was naturally very familiar with her country's battleships. The huge battleship, which was 500 meters long, was like a monster. It slowly came to the sky above the prince's mansion, and its shadow covered the sun. The people below trembled with fear. Although this place was connected to the dimensional universe, the level of civilization was not particularly high. It was still very difficult for people to leave the planet and enter the vast universe. This huge battleship, with its majestic muzzle, something that could only be seen in the dimensional universe, appeared in front of them in real life. This kind of shocking feeling was very different. Lin Jigao, who was already heavily injured, immediately stood up when he saw the battleship arrive. Ha, they're here. My granduncle is here. Lin Fan, Ziying, you're finished this time. Completely finished. The bottom of the battleship's cabin door opened, and a hanging ladder was thrown down. A group of extraterrestrial guests came down from it and walked directly to the center of the stage. The person leading them was a middle-aged man with a dignified face. He was dressed in gorgeous clothes, had a tall body, and had an astonishing aura. Just by standing there, he was able to compare with Lin Jigao and the others. Behind him were several warriors from other races. There were angels and demons. Most importantly, these people had reached the stellar level, a group of stellar level guards. Just one of these guards was enough to easily sweep away all the major forces on planet Wanghai. After these people came down, the others did not even dare to breathe loudly. Only Lin Jigao rolled and crawled to the feet of the middle-aged man. He hugged the man's thigh and cried with snot and tears. "Granduncle, you're finally here. You have to make a decision for your grandson." The dignified emperor, was actually trampled into the mud. And this Lin Fan is extremely daring. He actually dared to insult Ancestor Lin and Anna Ning's saintly grandmother. Oh, there's actually such a daring person. The middle-aged man's gaze was firmly fixed on Lin Jun. Chapter 1374. Lin Jun did not like the look of this middle-aged man either. However, he could sense the aura of the Lin family's bloodline from him. He asked coldly, "Who are you?" Zi Ying whispered into his ear, "This is the Prime Minister of the Fairy Empire, Lin Yunfei." Lin Yunfei. Yes, this person is very famous in the Fairy Empire. He is a member of the Lin family. I wanted to give my position to him, but I didn't find the right opportunity. I didn't expect him to be so impatient. Since Zi Ying's identity had already been exposed, she might as well spill everything to test Lin Jun's reaction. At this moment, Lin Yunfei's gaze fell on Zi Ying, and he sized her up with interest. "Ha! This has really broadened my horizons. You're actually Zi Qinxia?" Zi Ying snorted. "If you know it's me, why aren't you kneeling?" Lin Yunfei shook his finger. No, no, no. Even if you are the emperor, you are not worthy for me to kneel to you. You have already left the fairy immortal empire for 2,000 years. In these 2,000 years, the people of my Lin family have never needed to kneel to anyone. Not to mention that you are only the emperor of the fairy immortal empire. Even the chairman of the Federation of the Three River Star region or the emperor of the Fire Qilin Empire are not worthy for my Lin family to kneel to. Oomph. How impressive. Yes, I am impressive, Lin Yunfei said arrogantly. He didn't care about what Ziying thought. I know you are very strong. You were saved by the divine ancestor in the slave market. If not for the divine ancestor saving you and giving you freedom, you would have become someone's plaything. You have received such a great favor from the Lin family, but not only do you not want to repay it, you are even going against the Lin family. Zi Qinxia, where is your conscience? Zi Ying sneered. Yes, I was saved by Lin Jun, but Lin Jun is Lin Jun, and the Lin family is the Lin family. Do you think you can represent Lin Jun? If I have the chance to see him, I will definitely tell him what kind of annoying family the Lin family is now. Lin Yunfei laughed. Ha ha. Stupid. The divine ancestor is our Lin family's divine ancestor, and you're just an outsider. How could the divine ancestor be bewitched by an outsider like you? Besides, you're thinking too much. You won't have the chance to see the divine ancestor. Planet Wanghai will be your burial ground. Then, Lin Yunfei pointed at Zi Qinxia and said, Zi Qinxia, your emperor is gone today. Prepare to die. After saying that, Lin Yunfei ordered his guards to make a move. Zi Qinxia was actually a very powerful warrior. After all, she was from the same generation as Lin Jun. If it was in the past, these people would not even be enough for her to blow. But now, she was only at the flow stage. Facing a star stage bodyguard, she was definitely not a match. Lin Yunfei's main goal in coming to Stargazing Star was to kill Zi Qinxia and completely take over the fairy immortal empire. As for Lin Fan, he didn't even take him seriously. Lin Jun, who had been watching from the side, suddenly said, Are you a descendant of Lin Ping or Linen? This sentence seemed to have stirred up a hornet's nest. Lin Yunfei was about to make a move, but he stopped abruptly and said, Shut up. I didn't have time to deal with you, you idiot. How dare you jump out and speak? When talking about the divine ancestor's two sons, you have to add the word divine ancestor behind their names. When talking about the divine ancestor's wife, you have to add the word divine ancestor. Didn't anyone teach you this basic principle? Lin Jun became more and more irritated. This was the descendant of the Lin family. It seemed that he had been negligent. After nearly 3,000 years of reproduction, the Lin family had become the most powerful family in the new territories. Most of the descendants of the Lin family were even more arrogant. They kept talking about the divine ancestor and the divine ancestor. This way, no one dared to go against them, which encouraged their arrogance. People like Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao were definitely not exceptions. They were a common phenomenon. Lin Jun couldn't say that his parents' original intentions were wrong. It was just that they were far away in the fallen star lake of the primordial realm, surrounded by people who were singing and dancing. They probably didn't know about this. He had seen enough over the past few days. The power of the Lin family, and many of the Lin family's relatives, were all very domineering. This definitely couldn't go on. It was necessary to reorganize. Although Lin Jun's current identity was Lin Fan, an unknown pawn, it didn't stop him from dealing with the Lin family in front of him. Good. You've really grown up. Lin Ping and Lin are already calling themselves Divine Ancestor. Are you deaf? Lin Yunfei roared. You have to add Divine Ancestor in front of their names. It seems that a country bumpkin like you still doesn't know the meaning behind these two names. Do you know who they are? Lin Jun gritted his teeth. They are my sons. Although this earth-shattering statement was the truth, no one would believe it. In Lin Yunfei's view, this kid was just cursing. What big guts! Come on, kill this bastard who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth first. A level 9 stellar level demon race warrior immediately pounced on Lin Jun. The Fairy Empire was the same as the Sky River Empire where the Milky Way galaxy was located. They were both cosmic countries with elementary civilizations. The monarchs of these cosmic countries were generally nebula stage warriors. To enter the nebula stage, one had to pass through the black hole stage, and the realm before the black hole stage was the stellar level. A level 9 stellar level definitely represented a very strong combat power. Unless one could cross the black hole stage, which was the death tribulation of warriors, this was almost the limit. Lin Jun's current realm was only level 9 meteor stage, which was 4 realms below the comet stage, satellite stage, planet stage, and star stage. Even before Lin Jun achieved nirvana, he couldn't challenge someone who was 4 realms above him. But it was different in this life. Lin Jun had the combat experience and skills of a ruler, and he also had a ruler's battle skill. Even if it was a level 9 stellar level super expert, Lin Jun wasn't afraid. He raised his finger, Primal Chaos Finger. A light, gray, chaotic airflow broke through the air at an incredible speed. This demon race warrior didn't put Lin Jun, a small fry in the meteor stage, in his eyes at all. He didn't expect Lin Jun to attack so quickly and was hit by a single blow. The power of a ruler's battle skill was simply incredible. It directly turned a level 9 stellar level expert into dust. Boom! It was like fireworks exploding in the air, and a gust of wind blew, leaving nothing behind. This scene completely dumbfounded Lin Yunfei. The others present were also dumbfounded. With their thinking, they couldn't understand how such a thing could happen. Only Ziying's eyes were full of splendor. She went over and grabbed Lin Jun's sleeve. You are him, right? You must be. Otherwise, there's no way to explain it. You are. Chapter 1375. Lin Jun pushed Ziying away and stepped forward. This time, Lin Jun was really angry. It was a good thing that the Lin family was expanding, but he didn't expect that there would be such scum who would do all kinds of bad things. This family needed to be cleaned up. His first target was Lin Yunfei. Lin Jun had already seen that Lin Yunfei had reached the black hole stage. If he made another breakthrough, he would reach the nebula stage. He was indeed qualified to be the emperor of a beginner universe country. Lin Jun was only at the fleeting stage. After all, the difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth. However, with the Dominator battle technique, anything was possible. He raised his hand, and a ball of chaotic airflow surged. Lin Yunfei was quite knowledgeable. He had seen chaotic aura when he watched some videos. It's chaotic aura. Lin Yunfei sensed danger and dodged immediately before preparing a counterattack. However, just as he dodged, Lin Zhen's move was a feint. In the next second, he teleported behind Lin Yunfei. Hit! The chaotic finger of calamity was released again, causing Lin Yunfei to vomit blood and fall to the ground. Some of the level 9 stellar level experts around him swarmed forward to rescue him. Lin Zhen didn't need to be polite to these people. Although they were quite powerful, their attacking methods were laughably lacking in Lin Zhen's opinion. It was like two people with the same strength. One had already mastered a peerless sword technique, while the other only knew how to stick out his tongue at the other. The lethality was on a completely different level. In just a few moves, these level 9 stellar level experts were killed on the spot. Nothing was left of them. After taking care of these experts, the remaining people were no longer a threat. Lin Zhen attacked continuously and directly broke Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao's Dantian Sea of Qi. When a martial artist's Dantian Sea of Qi was destroyed, they would completely lose their strength and be no different from an ordinary person. Lin Zhen's series of actions shocked everyone present. This included the Lin couple, Hu Zheng, Kong Fong, the vice dean, the newly graduated students from Dripping Jade Peak, and countless civilians. At this moment, everyone had a deep understanding. No matter how famous you are, no matter how powerful your background is, sometimes it's not as useful as your fists. At the very least, in this kind of situation, you're bound to suffer. However, Lin Fan had sent Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao flying. This was definitely a big problem. After all, these two were the direct descendants of the Lin family. In the future, they would definitely attract the revenge of the other members of the Lin family. The Lin family's influence wasn't just limited to the Fairy Immortal Empire. They also had influence in the Sanjiang Federation and the Fire Qilin Empire. There were even the ancestors of the Lin family in the primordial realm. If these people came, would Lin Fan still be so glorious? Lin Zhen didn't care about their complicated feelings. He was the strongest here, so he should be the one calling the shots. Ziying, you should still be able to command some people, right? Ziying nodded. There's still many people from the Fairy Immortal Empire on this spaceship. Now that you've taken down Lin Yunfei, I can command them. Okay, let them hang Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao in front of this mansion. Don't let these two die. Then, spread this matter throughout the dimensional universe. The title will be Lin Zhen's Descendant, Stargazing Disaster. Ziying had a thoughtful look on her face. She took a deep look at Lin Zhen, then nodded silently. Although Lin Zhen denied it, she already had suspicions in her heart. This Lin Fan's identity was definitely not simple. Soon, those people from the Fairy Immortal Empire who came with Lin Yun were all subdued by Ziying. They had no choice but to submit. With that killing god around, if they didn't submit, they would die. The follow-up work was simple. Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao were tied up and hung on 2 tall flagpoles in front of the Wang Mansion. Moreover, the news spread quickly in the dimensional universe under the spread of people. The title that Lin Zhen came up with was sufficiently attractive. Within an hour, the number of views of this video in the dimensional universe exceeded 10 trillion. Moreover, this number was still increasing crazily. Within a day, it had exceeded 500 trillion views. Countless people left comments condemning Lin Fan, and many even threatened to go to the stargazing planet to save the divine ancestor's descendant. However, not many people dare to do so. After all, Lin Yunfei was an expert in the black hole stage, and even he couldn't do it. Those who wanted to save him had to be at least in the nebulous stage. The nearest nebulous stage expert could only be found in the Sanjiang Federation, and it would take about a year to come from the Sanjiang Federation. Therefore, Lin Zhen was completely fearless. Whoever wanted to come could come. He couldn't wait for more people to come so that he could deal with them all at once. He just didn't know how big the fish could be caught with these two baits. He believed that some of the domineering Lin family members wouldn't sit idly by. The big show on Stargazing Planet had come to an end. Lin Yunfei, Lin Zhigao, and the others' plan had been carried out smoothly. However, they had miscalculated that Lin Fan had such strong personal strength. All the voices of resistance had yielded in the face of such strength. The people dispersed one after another, their hearts filled with uneasiness and fear. Some people were disappointed, some were worried, and some were regretful. For example, the daughter of the prime minister, Kong Qianqian. She had thought that Lin Fan was useless and that Hu Feng was a good match for her future husband. However, she had never expected that she would have mistaken a bright pearl for a stubborn stone. She had every reason to believe that if she had agreed to Lin Fan's engagement, Lin Fan would never have abandoned her. Unfortunately, everything couldn't be restarted. She would never forget Lin Fan's indifference when she left the mansion. There was no emotion in his eyes when he looked at her, as if he didn't know her at all. She had clearly hurt him, but Lin Fan didn't even bother to mock her. The reason was simple: she didn't deserve it. Lin Fan didn't mock her, and the others didn't have so many scruples about her. After all, seeing that Lin Fan dared to hang Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao, many people had reason to believe that Lin Fan was absolutely not afraid of the Lin family. Since Lin Zhigao had been hung up, the prime minister's mansion, which relied on Lin Zhigao, would naturally decline day by day. Some people wantonly attacked Kong Qianqian's actions that day. In other people's mouths, she was a green tea bitch, a vicious woman who worked with others to frame the prince's mansion and Lin Fan. A mere silver psyche master, who was second in the school, couldn't even compare to a strand of Zi Ying's hair. She and Hu Feng of the general's mansion were a match made in heaven, a pair of scum. Thinking of the glorious Lin Fan and the rat Hu Feng, Kong Qianqian couldn't help but feel sad. She lay in her room all day and cried bitterly, completely losing her initiative and motivation. Chapter 1376. After hanging Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao in front of the palace, Lin Zhun began his most relaxed period of his life. He had already calculated that even if the Sanjiang Federation came to rescue them, it would still be a year later. Within a year, Lin Zhun would be able to grow to an astonishing level, so he wasn't worried about anything. After this incident, Lin Xia and his wife were completely relieved. Or rather, it could be said that they had nothing to lose. In any case, Lin Zhun had already hung the emperor up. He was already dead for a crime that could not be further punished. What was there to worry about? This was the mentality of a person. Now that they had reached this level, they were actually relaxed. The ones that they really needed to worry about were the emperor's courtiers. After a few days of fear, the first courtier of the emperor came to the palace to report to the emperor's equal, Wang Lin, about the country's affairs. His attitude was very clear. He hoped that Lin Xia or his son, Lin Fan, would inherit the throne. If the father and son didn't inherit the country, no one else would dare to inherit the throne. No one would want it even if it was given for free. With this start, a lot of people followed behind like a swarm of bees. They simply treated the prince's mansion as a throne room. As for the real palace, it had been completely forgotten. Those internal affairs departments had all moved to the front of the palace to work. Although Lin Xia didn't have any intention of rebelling, he couldn't stop him. It was no different from rebelling. Lin Xia wanted to ask his son what he should do because he knew that this situation was brought about by his son. If he wanted to become the emperor, he needed his son to support him. However, Lin Zhun didn't want to care about these things at all. The emperor of a small country on a planet couldn't pique his interest. He just wanted his father to think about it and do whatever he wanted. Lin Xia was helpless. He could only follow the current situation. In the end, within a few days, someone wanted him to become the emperor. Lin Xia, who was about to become the emperor, felt like he was dreaming. However, in the dead of night, he thought that having an invincible son was a good thing. If he wanted to be the emperor, then so be it. Although he didn't know how he would deal with the Lin family when they came to seek revenge in the future, he couldn't care less about that now. 10 days after the incident at the Wang residence, Lin Zhun declared himself the emperor and Yu Qingqing the empress. However, Lin Zhun did not allow them to appoint a crown prince. He did not want to be a crown prince. It would not be too late to appoint a crown prince after the two elders had a new child. Grand Marshal Hu Zheng and Prime Minister Kong Feng had already resigned before Lin Xia ascended the throne. However, Lin Jin knew that Lin Xia had already arranged for people to kill them on their way back home. Cutting the weeds and pulling up the roots was necessary. Lin Jun also appreciated this method. After Lin Shaolin ascended the throne, Lin Jun moved his residence to the palace. As Lin Shaolin only had one wife, Yu Qingqing, there were only 3 of them in the huge palace. Lin Jun occupied a third of the palace by himself and changed a messy palace into a large courtyard. However, there was another person who moved into the palace as well. That was Ziying. Ziying did not want to return to the fairy goddess empire at all. She stayed here to accompany Yu Qingqing. Although she did not say anything, Yu Qingqing clearly treated her as her future daughter-in-law. Lin Jun did not stop her. His daily task was to study the ruler's battle technique. After many experiments, Lin Jun discovered that his comprehension ability had doubled compared to before Nirvana. His cultivation talent had also increased by more than 100 times. Comprehending something or cultivating something was like using a cheat code. It was even faster than cultivating 100 times faster. In a month, Lin Jun broke through from the peak of the meteor stage. In 3 days, he broke through the comet stage level 9 and reached the Weizhou stage. 2 months later, he reached the planet stage. Another 3 months later, he reached the star stage. Then, 3 days later, he crossed the black hole. In the second half of the year, Lin Jun officially advanced to the nebulous stage. Counting the time with his fingers, Lin Jun estimated that by the end of the year, he should be able to reach the star domain stage and become a domain monarch. In the entire new territories, the strongest person was only a realm king. However, in the heavenly gate, one could not live forever. After becoming a domain monarch, Lin Jun would be invincible in the new territories. However, Lin Jun also had a secret worry in his heart. That was, he still had not found a way to awaken the Chaos Green Lotus. There were many times when he seemed to have touched the edge of awakening, but there was always a barrier in his heart that prevented him from entering. How can I awaken the Green Lotus? Do I have to cultivate to the peak of Pseudo-Dominator again? That would really be a waste of time. No matter how fast he cultivated in this life, he would not be able to reach the peak of Pseudo-Dominator without a few hundred years. Lin Jun did not want to waste his Nirvana life on such a matter. He wanted to undergo Nirvana 9 times. It did not matter how much he recovered. Forget it. Since I can't find it, I won't deliberately look for it. Let nature take its course. Perhaps one day, success will follow naturally. Lin Jun comforted himself and continued to study his Dominator battle technique. Everything was good here, but the civilization level was too low. There were no suitable weapons, and Lin Jun did not want to leave this place for a long journey. His parents in this life were not high-level warriors, and Lin Jun had no intention of letting them live forever. According to the laws of nature, it would be time for Lin Jun to leave when they reached the end of their lives. Every day, Ziying would come to visit Lin Jun. She did not mention Lin Jun's identity and brought him delicious food every day. Lin Jun didn't know how this last learned to cook so well. Every day, the delicacies were different, which made Lin Jun eat with relish. Time passed like this, and in the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year. Lin Jun estimated that if someone came to rescue Lin Yunfei and the others, it would be after the new year. However, he did not expect Lin Xia and Yu Qingqing to make a request at this time. They asked Lin Jun to immediately marry Ziying and try to leave a descendant for their family. Lin Xia and Yu Qingqing knew that the future was full of uncertainty. They hoped that their family would not be cut off, and letting Ziying have children was the best choice. Seeing his parents' expectant eyes and Ziying's hesitant attitude, Lin Jun let out a long sigh. Ziying had guessed his identity, but she did not say anything. Lin Jun did not want to leave anything here, but if he refused, it would be unfair to his parents. If he could find a random person to give birth to a child and leave a descendant for them, it would be better to have Ziying. After all, this woman was quite pleasing to the eye, and her strength was not bad. Seeing Ziying's expectant gaze, Lin Jun finally nodded. I have a request. If your child does not enter the immortal state in the future, he is not allowed to have any descendants. Also, every generation will only have one child. Can you agree to this? Ziying's pretty face immediately became serious. She said with a straight face, I promise I can definitely do this. I don't like to see the messy affairs of large families. Lin Zhen nodded slightly, but Zi Ying suddenly jumped onto him. Chapter 1377. At the end of the year, Lin Zhen also got married in a low-key manner. Strictly speaking, Lin Zhen didn't love Zi Ying. He didn't even like her. He just didn't hate her. This marriage was just a wish of his parents. Zi Ying also understood this very well. After a night of pleasure, she was sure that she could get pregnant. After that, she didn't bother Lin Zhen anymore. Life between the two of them continued as usual. Lin Zhen was waiting for the arrival of the Lin family. In the second year, when Lin Zhen became a level 5 region king, the Lin family came. Over the past year, the voices of saving Lin Yunfei and Lin Zhigao had been incessantly heard in the dimension. Many relatives of the Lin family had also issued a stern statement, requesting Lin Zhen to immediately release the two of them unconditionally and apologize. Out of sight, out of mind, Lin Zhen ignored the noise outside and waited for the person to come. This time, the person who came was a descendant of Lin Ping. He was currently the deputy speaker of the Sanjiang Federation and a level 7 region king. The deputy speaker brought a huge fleet with hundreds of thousands of people. It looked like they were determined to raze planet Wanghai to the ground. The arrival of the Lin family gave too many people a chance to explode. Many people who opposed Lin Fan walked onto the streets, cheering that their doomsday was coming. The Lin family's power would rise again. But just as these people were making a ruckus, a heavy blow came. Lin Fan took the initiative to attack. In space, he wiped out the Lin family's expeditionary army. This time, Lin Fan went on a killing spree. Other than the deputy speaker, who was captured alive and hung in front of the prince's mansion, no one else returned. The huge fleet also became something for the new empire, providing a solid foundation for the new empire to rush out of planet Wanghai. This battle in space will be considered a battle of great significance in the future. It marked the beginning of the decline of the Lin family, who had been rampant in the new territories for more than 2,000 years. After defeating the Lin family's expedition army, Lin Fan even declared in the dimensional universe that the Lin family was arrogant and despotic, causing the heavens to be angry and people to resent them. They deserved it. If anyone tried to come to their rescue, they would all die here, no matter who it was. There were plenty of flagpoles. What followed was the pitiful appearance of the 3 Lin family members. This scene shocked many people. Although some members of the Lin family from the Fire Qilin Empire would immediately come over, it would still take a few years for them to arrive. During this period of time, Lin Xia had also organized her men to capture all those who had openly opposed him. This had greatly stabilized his rule on planet Wanghai. Lin Xia's success had also inspired many people to rebel against the Lin family. In many places, people began to rise up in resistance. When the real battle started, people gradually realized that Lin Zhen wasn't that scary. As long as the legendary invincible divine ancestor Lin Zhen didn't come, and the experts of the primordial realm didn't come, there was still hope for this battle. Moreover, everyone was also looking at Wanghai's star. Even if the Lin family were to counterattack, the first person they would target would definitely be Lin Fan of Wanghai Star. If they didn't defeat this person, the Lin family's reputation in the new territories would plummet. Every day they delayed would mean more losses. Therefore, planet Wanghai became the weather vane for the rise and fall of the Lin family. If they couldn't deal with planet Wanghai Star, the entire new territories would slowly fall out of the Lin family's control. The Lin family members of the Fire Qilin Empire also attached great importance to this matter. They recruited people from other advanced civilizations and gathered 10 world kings to head towards planet Wanghai Star. The 3-year journey was shortened to 2 years. They had to resolve this matter in the shortest time possible. Unfortunately, no one expected that Lin Fan, who was only a domain monarch 2 years ago, had already become a level 9 world king by the time they arrived. A level 9 world king was the strongest battle power in the new territories. Without passing through the heavenly gate, the vitality in the new territories wasn't enough to allow a martial artist to attain immortality. The 10 world kings joined forces, but they were still defeated by Lin Zhen in one move. Then, They were hung on the flagpole in front of the Wang mansion. Just as Lin Jin said, there were plenty of flagpoles. This incident had completely convinced the Lin family members of the new territories. They had been defeated. No one in the new territories was a match for planet Wanghai Lin Fan. If they wanted to maintain the Lin family's glory, they could only ask for help from the primordial realm. Following this incident, the entire new territories rebelled against the Lin family. In many places and galaxies, the Lin family's rule had incited fierce resistance. After seeing that the Lin family wasn't as scary as they thought, the resistance became even fiercer. The Lin family's rule quickly fell apart. Many Lin family members fled in panic. The new territories was no longer safe. The Lin family members began to flee to the primordial realm through the heavenly gate in the Sagittarius constellation. Although they fled in a sorry state, they didn't really give up. As long as they reached the primordial realm and the holy land of Fallen Star Lake, they could report this matter to the Lin family ancestors in the Holy Land. They would definitely be able to reverse the situation. And Ning, Su Mingwei, and Ning Qingxian were in the Holy Land. These three were the wives of the divine ancestor and were very strong. It was said that Ning Qingxian had already reached the godly monarch realm and was the top female general of the Lin family. The rest were the angel sisters, the fairy princess Ling, and Lin Zhen's biological daughter, Mei Lin. Each of them was a hero among women. Although these female generals of the Lin family might not care about them, the two ancestors, Lin Ping and Lin En, definitely wouldn't. This was because these people were the descendants of Lin Ping and Lin En. How could they sit by and do nothing? At most, they would beg the two ancestors, Lin Lia and Li Qin. They were soft-hearted and would definitely agree to the requests of so many juniors. When the time came, the Holy Land of Fallen Star Lake would definitely send that damned Lin Fan and those rebels of the new territories to hell. When they regained power, they would definitely make those who dared to rebel pay a painful price. On Sea, gazing planet, Lin Zhen sat alone in the void, looking into the distance. His eye of illusion breaker could pass through the distant galaxy, surpassing the speed of light to directly see the other side. That was the heavenly gate. The people of the Lin family were flocking there, trying their best to break through the heavenly gate. It wasn't easy to go to the primordial realm through the heavenly gate. Only world kings could pass through. The Lin family had selected many world king level representatives and began to charge forward. Fortunately, the Lin family's cultivation technique was quite good. Those who were willing to cultivate were quite strong. There were quite a few world kings who successfully passed through the heavenly gate. After passing through the heavenly gate, they carried the hopes of the Lin family. They had to bring the situation here to the primordial realm and let the ancestors of the Lin family know. Lin Zhen could have gone over and caught them all in one fell swoop, but he didn't do so. These people were called family, but in fact they were just strangers. Lin Zhen was neither sad nor happy about them. What he really wanted to see was what his family would choose in the primordial realm. Chapter 1378. Primordial Realm, Fallen Star Lake's Sacred Land. Dozens of realm kings had finally arrived after a long and arduous journey. If these people were in the new territories, any one of them would be a famous figure. They might be kings of advanced civilizations or tyrants with wealth that could rival countries. But in the primordial realm, they were nothing. The primordial realm and the new territories didn't exchange information, but in the primordial realm, Lin Zhen was still a super big shot. Elements of Lin Zhen could be seen everywhere. Fortunately, these realm kings weren't brainless. Before knowing the attitude of their family elders, they didn't dare to run amok under Lin Zhen's banner. They could only travel for more than a decade before arriving at Fallen Star Lake from the Heavenly Gate. Along the way, they suffered a lot because realm kings were plentiful in the primordial realm. They didn't have the glory of the new territories. Especially when they arrived at the territory of the Great Qin Empire, near Fallen Star Lake, the three flowers of longevity didn't count for much. It wasn't until they passed through the light gate of the lake and arrived at Picking Stars Island that they felt they finally had a place to vent their grievances. Inside the Picking Stars Island sacred land, they were allowed to enter the wooden house where the sacred land guards lived. After passing through the winding wooden bridge, a golden dragon broke out of the water. This golden dragon had been here when Lin Zhun was practicing martial arts at Fallen Star Lake. When Lin Zhun's water divine avatar was guarding the sacred land, he had given it a lot of guidance. Now, this golden dragon had already passed the third stage of the divine transformation realm and become a mid-god spirit beast. Its huge dragon eyes looked at the group of realm kings. They were so scared that they stuck close to the wooden bridge, not daring to move. The golden dragon looked for a while, then 2 streams of mist came out of its nostrils. It actually spoke. You have master's bloodline, but your soul is tainted. You don't have a trace of spirituality. Whoosh! With a swing of its huge tail, water splashed everywhere. The golden dragon entered the river and disappeared. It wasn't until the powerful dragon's aura disappeared that these people let out a long sigh. Too scary. This dragon is much scarier than any star beast in the new territories. I feel like it can kill me in one breath. Not just you, but all of us. If I can bring this dragon back to the new territories, it'll be enough to easily kill Lin Fan. Let's go. Let's go in and seek an audience with the Holy Grandmother. They won't sit by and do nothing about their descendants, right? The World Kings arrived at the room. As soon as they entered, they saw 2 familiar faces. These 2 people were their ancestors. One was Lin Ping, and the other was Lin An. Lin Ping and Lin An's aptitudes were very good, even surpassing their mother, Ning. Su Mingyue and Ning would become high gods later than them. But after reaching the high god level, it would be hard for them to advance any further. Because of the multiplication of the clan, each of them had married many wives. It was inevitable that they would be distracted in their cultivation. If they couldn't keep up, they wouldn't be able to keep up. Even now, they were still stuck at the early stage of the high-level deity stage, and it was difficult for them to make any progress. These world kings were either Lin Ping's descendants or Lin An's descendants, so they were naturally well aware of their ancestor's appearance. When they saw their ancestor, they were immediately overcome with grief. They couldn't help but kneel down and loudly complain. "Ancestor, you have to help us. We're suffering. If the 2 old ancestors don't care about us, your descendants will be exterminated. Patriarch Linen, I'm your 20th great-great-grandson. I've been burning incense for you day and night. I'm the 33rd generation of Patriarch Lin Ping." I shut up. A woman's shout rang out, and these people suddenly became like ducks that had been grabbed by the neck, and no one made a sound. They raised their heads and saw that there was a group of women sitting in the main hall. This group of women immediately dazzled the descendants of the Lin family. Each of them was more beautiful than the other. Any one of them would be at least a nebula-grade beauty if you were to take them out. With this group of women together, they could make any man's eyes pop out of their sockets. However, not many of them could recognize them. And Ning's saintly grandmother naturally recognized them, as did Su Mingyue's saintly grandmother, and Mayor Lin's saintly grandmother, but the others couldn't recognize them. The person who spoke was Ning, and Ning's pretty face was frosty. Looking at the group of people in the main hall, she was furious. The brothers Lin Ping and Lin and were Ning's sons. They were twins. The people in the main hall were also Ning's descendants. However, other than her grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, Ning didn't recognize any of the others. Her grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren were currently in the primordial realm, and Ning kept them in check, and nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened. As for the rest of the descendants, most of them had gone to the new territories, and Ning had also heard about what had happened in the new territories. However, the mountains were high and the road was far away, so it was inconvenient to manage them. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Most of these things were left to the brothers Lin Ping and Lin and to handle. However, she had never expected that such a big thing would happen. They had committed crimes and acted domineeringly. In the end, they had incurred the wrath of the heavens and were almost exterminated. This news had long spread, seeing the cowardice of her descendants, and Ning couldn't help but deeply regret her choice back then. And Ning wanted to scold them, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. And Ning couldn't scold them directly here, because she wasn't the only mistress of the house. There were also a few other sisters. And Ning turned around and asked the three women beside her, "Sisters, how do you think we should handle this?" The nervous realm kings also looked at the other women. They knew Su Mingwei, but there was also a beautiful and elegant woman dressed in green who looked like she had come out of painting. There was also a beautiful woman dressed in red who had a heroic look on her face. They didn't recognize her either. They didn't know where these two women came from. In any case, they couldn't be more important than Ning's grandmother and Su Mingyue's grandmother. Their hearts were still filled with hope. Su Mingwei frowned slightly, then sighed. "Sisters, you should make the decision on this matter. I'm really not in the mood." The woman in green shook her head. "I'm not good at handling these things." In the end, everyone's gazes fell on the woman in red. The woman in red swept her beautiful eyes over the realm kings, then spoke. "Sister Ning, my opinion is very simple. Although these people are members of the Lin family in name, they haven't had any contact with the family for thousands of years. Normally, would any of them even think of coming to see you? Now that you're in trouble, they come looking for you. This will only bring trouble to their relatives. If it were up to me, we should just kick them out of the house. What's the point of letting them be so long-winded?" Ning thought for a moment. She seemed to agree with the woman in red's opinion. Hearing such words, how could these world kings remain calm? One of the fifth-generation descendants immediately stood up and shouted. Chapter 1379. Hearing this, the woman in red sneered. "I'm Feng Qingwan." The world kings opened their mouths and were all stunned. Feng Qingwan was a legend. It was said that she had an ambiguous relationship with Lin Jun, but no one knew whether it was true or not. Seeing her today, it seemed that the legend was true. And among these women, Feng Qingwan's status seemed to be quite high. They looked at Ning with hope, but Ning didn't even look at them. She nodded to Feng Qingwan. "Sister Feng is right. These things are not worth our trouble." Lin Ping, Linen, chased these people away. The world kings were stunned. They thought that the two old ancestors would help them, but Lin Ping and Lin and didn't seem to have a high status in this family. Since the four old ancestors agreed, they couldn't refute. They pinched their noses and chased the world kings out. After the world kings were chased out, Lin Ping and the others asked the golden dragon at the gate to send them out of Star Picking Island. Once they left Star Picking Island, they wouldn't be able to cause any more trouble. The world kings were very unwilling, but under the supervision of the golden dragon, they could only lower their heads and leave. They asked to see old ancestor Lin Liye, but they soon received a reply. The old ancestor refused to see them. Lin Liye and Li Qin were not unreasonable. Now that the Lin family was in trouble and Lin Jun's condition was unknown, who would be in the mood to care about these children who had lived for countless lifetimes? Seeing that the world kings didn't want to leave, the golden dragon didn't hold back. It sent out a water dragon and washed them out of Star Picking Island and into Fallen Star Lake. The world kings struggled in Fallen Star Lake and were almost eaten by the water monsters. They used all their strength to escape to the shore. After leaving Fallen Star Lake and arriving at Great Qin's territory, a fifth-generation descendant called Lin Hua said unwillingly, F*CK. What's the use of having such an ancestor? She lives a carefree life and is strong, but she doesn't care about the life and death of her descendants. I don't want such an ancestor. Grandpa Hua, why don't we try to find a sacred ancestor again? I think the sacred ancestor is the one who calls the shots in this family. That's right. As long as we can find sacred ancestor Lin Jun, all of our problems will be solved. That's right, that's right. Don't we have the divine ancestor's dimensional universe number? If we add him, he definitely won't sit by and do nothing. These world kings acted without hesitation. Lin Hua took the initiative to add Lin Jun's dimensional universe. The account does not exist. These world kings were all stunned. Adding another person's dimensional universe number meant that they couldn't be contacted or that the other party refused to add them. But what did this mean when the account didn't exist? Over the years, it wasn't that there hadn't been any descendants who wanted to fly to the top and become a phoenix trying to add Lin Jun. However, they were all unable to contact him or refused to add him, or even verified him. No one had ever succeeded. It was as if Lin Jun's artificial intelligence had directly blocked them. As time passed, no one dared to do so anymore. However, the situation this time was different. Lin Hua planned to communicate with Lin Jun's artificial intelligence, but he didn't expect it to not exist. Did you make a mistake? Take a closer look. It can't be. Which Lin family descendant doesn't know the divine ancestor's dimensional universe number? The group of people carefully checked and confirmed that the number was correct. If the number was correct, then there was only one possibility. The master of this dimensional universe was already dead. These world kings looked at each other in dismay, completely unable to believe this fact. It can't be. How could divine ancestor Lin Jun actually die? It shouldn't be wrong. The dimensional universe doesn't exist, so the master must be dead. Think about it. After entering the wooden house, everyone's face was filled with worry. Moreover, old ancestor Lin Liye refused to see us. Why would such a situation occur? That's right. Old ancestor even organized a family gathering. How could he not care? Something big must have happened. Perhaps this matter is real. These world kings discussed for a while and finally confirmed their judgment. Lin Jun was dead. This matter was like a bolt from the blue, shocking these people for a long time. In the end, it was Lin Hua who spoke first. Damn it, he actually died just like that. His death ends all troubles, but I'm afraid that we will never be able to make a comeback. Grandpa Hua, then what should we do? It seems that Fallen Star Lake won't give us any help. Are we still going to return to the new territories? Lin Hua gritted his teeth. It's not that easy. Since they don't care about our lives, we don't have to care about them either. We'll spread the news that Lin Jun is dead and make it difficult for them. The World Kings sucked in a breath of cold air. They all felt that this move was too ruthless. The reason why Fallen Star Lake could stand tall in the primordial realm was mainly because of Lin Jun's reputation. If it weren't for a god like Lin Jun, many people would definitely pounce on them and completely destroy Fallen Star Lake. If it were any other time, they definitely wouldn't do this. However, in the current situation, they couldn't care less. Although their words didn't carry much weight, as long as this news spread, there would definitely be people who would investigate it. If they wanted to do it, they would do it. These crazy world kings immediately spread out and began to spread the news all over the primordial realm. Not long after, gradually, a piece of news began to spread. The primordial realm's invincible god of war, Lin Jun, who dominated the new territories, had fallen in the forbidden land of the universe. If it were ordinary news, it wouldn't have spread so quickly. However, news regarding Lin Jun spread at the speed of light. Moreover, the people who spread the news all claimed to be descendants of the Lin family. After some verification, these people were indeed descendants of the Lin family. It seemed that this news couldn't be fake. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The news spread rapidly like a plague. Apart from the endless star ocean region, almost all the countries in the primordial realm received the news. People didn't believe it and began to search for Lin Jun in all kinds of ways. However, Lin Jun seemed to have vanished without a trace. There were no more traces of him. Later, a piece of news came from the demonic planet. Lin Jun had died in the battle with 41 sovereigns in the town of illusions. Although this news was still hearsay, its credibility was very high. The entire primordial realm was shocked by the huge impact of Lin Jun's death. Some were happy, some were worried, and some had other thoughts. Although Lin Jun was almost invincible when he was alive, enough to deter anyone who had bad intentions, since he was dead, there was nothing to be afraid of. The Lin family, which had lost Lin Jun and the Fallen Star Lake sacred land, was a big fat piece of meat. Lin Jun had grown for many years and made countless enemies. There were already people who had their eyes on him. Chapter 1380. Lin Jun is dead. Is this news accurate? In the endless star ocean, within the Emperor clan's territory. After the Heavenly Fire War, although the Emperor clan had lost their ruling position, they were not extinct. Because the Emperor clan of the Fiend Star had also been defeated by Lin Jun, many of the remaining Emperor clan members had come to the endless star ocean. Therefore, not only did the Emperor clan's power not weaken, it actually increased. There were many Emperor clan members who had entered the deity realm, and there were even God King level experts. With the arrival of the Emperor clan members, they once again ruled the monster, devil, and ghost clans. Now, they were another huge force. Previously, they were worried that Lin Jun would discover them, so they did not dare to show themselves. They were patiently waiting for an opportunity. They did not expect that after waiting for this, they would receive news of Lin Jun's death. The current ruler of the Emperor clan was called Heaven Soul, a newly promoted God King. The leaders of the monster, devil, and ghost clans were all peak high-level gods. Heaven Soul sat on the throne and asked about the news of Lin Jun's death. Your Majesty, it can't be wrong. This news has been confirmed by many. Lin Jun is definitely finished. Heaven Soul stood up excitedly and laughed loudly. Good. That's great. How many years has it been? I've finally waited for this day. Lin Jun, that bastard, first destroyed my Emperor clan's foundation in the Endless Star Ocean, then broke my Fiend Star clan into pieces. I experienced that battle personally. If I hadn't been smart enough to hide in advance, I'm afraid even I would have been finished. After so many years of enduring humiliation, I've always dreamed of taking revenge. However, Lin Jun advanced triumphantly. I thought that I would never have the chance. Who would have thought? Ha. The heavens are helping me. Heaven Soul flung his black cloak, revealing the royal robe inside. Today, I can finally call myself king openly. Since Lin Jun is dead, the Fallen Star Lake is without a leader. The Lin family has become a tree without roots and can be trampled on by others. Clang! Heaven Soul pulled out the sword at his waist. Gather the troops and send them to the Fallen Star Lake. There is no need for a holy land without a holy land guarding it. People of the Lin family, our family's blood cannot be spilled in vain. We must make the Lin family pay with their blood. The demons and monsters that have been suppressed for thousands of years immediately howled like a pack of wolves. The Lin family was a family of beauties. What could those delicate women do? Other than being able to cry, she was probably only useful in bed. Now that Lin Jun was dead, their fates would be extremely tragic. Gusts of chilly wind swept across, as the hundreds of millions of warriors of the four clans began to gather. Like locusts, they charged out from the depths of the endless sea of stars and headed straight for Meteor Lake. Such a scene did not only happen in the endless sea of stars. Lin Jun had been advancing for many years, so naturally, he had to step on countless people. When Lin Jun's enemies in other places heard this news, they were even happier than celebrating the new year. Each and every one of them, big or small, began to advance towards the Meteor Lake. Destroying the Lin family and removing the sacred land from the list was a glorious achievement that most people would never encounter. How could they miss such a good opportunity? There were even some opportunists who felt that this was a good opportunity to carve up the Lin family, so they joined in the encirclement. The Lin family was no longer the Lin family that people feared. It was a piece of juicy meat that too many people wanted to take a bite out of. Lin Jun's four wives gathered in the primordial realm's Meteor Lake sacred land. The current situation was terrible. News kept coming in, and the entire sacred land was in a state of panic. There were even many sacred land disciples who requested to meet the grandmothers. They wanted to confirm if Lin Jun was dead. The Lin madams were very clear about the thoughts of these people. If Lin Jun was still alive, then they would definitely stay behind to fight as if they had been injected with chicken blood. This was because as long as Lin Jun returned, no matter how many people came, they would immediately collapse and die without a burial ground. But if Lin Jun was dead, then they would very likely abandon the sacred land and go far away. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Now that the tree had not fallen, these monkeys could no longer sit still. What the few of them needed to discuss was how to explain things to these people. In the room, and Ning said solemnly to Feng Qingwan, Sister Feng, when Sister Mingwei, Sister Qingxian, and I sensed that something had happened to our husband, we felt that the sky had collapsed. At that time, the three of us even decided to follow our husband. Fortunately, Sister Feng came at that time. Su Mingwei added, "That's right. If Sister Feng did not say that our husband might still be alive, we would already be dead. Now, we all want to ask Sister Feng, do you think our husband is really alive? Ning Qingxian also cast a concerned look. Although she did not like to talk, the eagerness in her eyes could not be concealed. Feng Qingwan took a deep breath and said, "This matter is a bit strange. Our husband may really not be alive at the moment. Sisters, like me, are connected with our husband's mind, but I only believe in our husband. He has always been a miracle creator. He never lets people down. If we give up now, then when our husband comes back in the future, how sad will he be?" The women looked at each other and felt the same. Lin Jun had created countless miracles for so many years. The people who believed in Lin Jun the most were his wives. "Sister Feng, what do you think about the current situation?" Ning asked. Feng Qingwan smiled faintly. "You mean those disciples of the sacred land outside? A group of people who are greedy for life and afraid of death is not worth mentioning. If we lie to them, then this lie must be covered by countless subsequent lies. I don't like to do this, and I believe that our husband also feels the same. What do you think?" Ning Qingxian finally said at this time, "We don't need those half-hearted people. This matter, we will solve it ourselves." Su Mingyue's eyes showed a firm look. "Yes, our husband asked us to stay here to guard the sacred land. The people here can only be us. If others want to stay, they can stay. If they want to leave, they can leave. Even without them, we can still do it." And Ning also nodded. "Well, let's do it. We are our husband's wives. Our husband has never been a coward. We can't ruin his reputation." Feng Qingwan smiled. "Well, since you all think so, then I will tell the truth to those people outside." Just then, the door suddenly opened. Angel, Ling and Lin Jun's daughter, Mayor Lin, were all standing outside the door in tight clothes. "Mayor, what are you doing here? Go back to your room." Su Mingyue was a little worried. "Mother, you all dared to fight for the sacred land. Why can't I? I'm also father's child. I want to fight side by side with you." Mayor Lin's eyes were red. She stood stubbornly in front of the door and confronted her mother. Su Mingyue was stunned for a moment. After a long while, she took a deep breath. "Well, in that case, Mayor will be presumptuous with mother." Chapter 1381. Fallen Star Lake and Lin family were not the same in the hearts of the disciples of the Holy Land. Maybe when Lin Jun was alive, it was different now because Lin Jun was dead. It was the same for the Holy Land. The Holy Land had always been there, but the people in the Holy Land were changing all the time. Lin Jun was dead and left behind a mess. They had no obligation to stay here and be buried with him. So they needed to get an accurate news. That was whether Lin Jun was still alive. Many people thought that the Lin family might quibble and make up lies to deceive them so that they would stay and fight with the Lin family. But they were not fools. If they wanted to prove that Lin Jun was still alive, they must show real evidence. It was not so easy to deceive them. Many radical people had prepared a lot of relevant evidence to refute the women of the Lin family. But they never expected that they would get such an ending. The four ladies of the Lin family, plus Lin Jun's other women and his daughter, a total of 8 beauties appeared. Feng Qingwan, who was wearing a red dress, came to the front of the crowd and looked at them with contempt. "I know what you are thinking. I have always liked to be straightforward. Since you want to know the answer, then I will tell you. My husband is indeed dead. Those who are willing to stay here are welcome. Those who do not want to stay, immediately go as far as possible. You don't need to bear the grudges of the Lin family, and you don't need to be responsible for them. But I want to make one thing clear. Those who leave now will never have the chance to return to the Fallen Star Lake." The crowd was silent. They did not use the words they had prepared. No one expected that the Lin family would admit it directly. They needed to digest this matter. Finally, someone asked, "If we leave, what about you?" Feng Qingwan replied faintly, "We will stay here and fight until we can't hold on anymore." After that, the women of the Lin family did not look at them anymore. They went to do their own things. Tens of thousands of people stood there for a long time. Finally, someone made a choice. Most of them chose to leave, but there were 3,000 to 4,000 people who chose to stay. They had been used to the life here. They did not know where to go. The women of the Lin family dared to stay. What were they afraid of? Just before the various crusading armies arrived, this important news was spread out again. The news of Lin Zhen's death had been confirmed, but the women of the Lin family chose to stay behind in the Holy Land and swore to guard it to the death. The entire primordial realm was in turmoil. There were many people in the punitive expedition army, and it was roughly estimated that there were more than 10 billion of them. Could the fallen star lake still hold on? Perhaps the glory of the Lin family had truly come to an end. Some discerning people could see the crux of the matter. The first to release the news was the Lin family in the new territories. These people came to the primordial realm to ask for help, but were rejected. They felt that there was no way out, so they took revenge like this. However, they didn't think about how much evil they had done and whether they deserved it. Such a person was worse than a beast. Even when he was about to die, he still wanted to drag others down with him. However, it was useless to talk about this now. The Lin family of Fallen Star Lake was about to be finished, but they still had a chance to find a corner and drag out an ignoble existence, living like dogs. However, it was a pity that the Fallen Star Lake's countless years of foundation was about to be destroyed. The news quickly spread to the new territories. In the new territories, the speed of the Lin family's collapse was even faster. The people who had been exploited by the Lin family for many years were now even more emboldened to resist boldly. All of the Lin family's foundation was destroyed, and the Lin family's power was completely wiped out. Although there were still many Lin family members who escaped, they were no longer a threat. After losing Lin Zhen, this big tree, they would never be able to walk to the top again. This matter was vividly reflected on planet Wanghai. Lin Xia's rule on planet Wanghai was actually not considered stable. This was because Lin Zhen's strength was already deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. As long as Lin Zhen returned, or the Lin family members of the primordial realm returned, Lin Xia's reign as the emperor would probably come to an end. However, when this news spread, those who still yearned for the Lin family's strength completely gave up. These few days, there was an endless stream of people who came to pay respects to His Majesty. They all wanted to show their loyalty. However, these people were all rejected at the door. This was because Lin Xia was old and was just an ordinary person. His lifespan was coming to an end. Not only Lin Xia, but Yu Qingqing was also terminally ill and did not have much time left. Now, there were 3 people by their bedside. One was Lin Fan, another was Ziying, and the last was their son, a little guy called Lin Tianxi. He was not considered young. Lin Tianxi was already 12 years old. This was because another 12 years had passed. In front of their bed, Lin Xia held Lin Fan's hand and smiled contentedly. This was his final radiance before death, but he had no regrets. This life was extraordinary. He had a good son. Although his son had no intention of taking the throne, he had a successor in the future. Lin Fan had been accompanying them until his parents closed their eyes peacefully. The emperor had passed away. The empress had also lived and died with the emperor. However, no one had time to be sad because the new emperor was about to ascend the throne. Ziying looked at Lin Fan and said sadly, "You can't wait until your son grows up?" Lin Fan stood up slowly and came to Ziying's side. For the first time, he raised his hand and touched Ziying's cheek. "We can't. Our fate as husband and wife ends today." "Why?" Lin Fan smiled. "Why do you ask? You already know the answer in your heart, don't you?" "You? Are you really him?" Ziying's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. This was the first time Lin Fan had talked about this. Lin Fan did not speak again. He stood up and looked up at the starry sky. He already knew about the primordial realm. His wives had made the right choice. If they died, they would die. Even if they lived, it would be a matter of their next life. The battle in the primordial realm was on the verge of breaking out. It was dangerous. However, Lin Zhen did not want to care, nor did he have the time to care. It was time to let go of the past life. He had already reincarnated and was no longer the Lin Zhen of the past. Perhaps in his next life, he would still be able to witness this battle, but that was still his next life. Goodbye, Lin Fan. So, awakening is letting go. Only when my wives truly announce my death can I truly be free from my previous life. From then on, there will be no more Lin Zhen in this world. Let bygones be bygones. If fate wills it, We'll meet again in the next life. Ah. Lin Jun clasped his hands together. The auspicious clouds above his head rolled, and the chaotic air billowed. A vast divine light descended from the sky, and a green lotus bud appeared above his head. The chaotic green lotus that had not been seen in his life had awakened. Chapter 1382. The battle for the Holy Land of Meteor Fall Lake had finally begun. Although the monarch race had yet to arrive with the 4 races, it would take at least a few decades for them to arrive from the endless sea of stars. However, those who came to Meteor Fall Lake first could not wait any longer. The first to eat crabs would always reap the most benefits. The first to take down the Lin family would definitely reap the most benefits. An army formed at the last minute, with over 10 million people gathered, began to attack the Meteor Lake. There were not many people left to maintain the operation of the Holy Land. The teleportation gate in the lake had already lost its effectiveness. However, this failure caught these people off guard. Huge lake monsters began to appear in the lake. As soon as the punitive team set out, they suffered huge losses. Nearly half of them died in the lake to feed the fish. When the remaining people arrived at Picking Stars Island, the real battle began. However, these people soon paid the price. They originally thought that the women of the Lin family were easy to bully. However, they could not deal with the 2 brothers, Lin Ping and Lin En, who came out to fight for the first time. The Lin brothers were high gods after all. However, there were very few gods among the punitive team. Only an early-stage high god was elected as the temporary commander and led the team. However, he was attacked by the Lin brothers and died in just a few moves. Lin Ping and Lin En were also filled with guilt. After all, this incident was caused by their descendants. They were determined to perform well at Meteor Fall Lake. If anyone wanted to hurt the women of the Lin family, they would have to step over their dead bodies. The punitive team was annihilated. It was only then that these people realized that a battle between high-level warriors could not be won by piling up manpower. Tens of thousands of troops could be wiped out in a single move. The punitive team learned their lesson and began to recruit god-level experts. In fact, there were still many gods in the primordial realm. It was just that they usually did not appear. At this moment, everyone used whatever abilities they had and called their friends. There was strength in numbers. However, the primordial realm was huge and the journey was long. It would take a long time for the reinforcements to arrive. The punitive team did not sit around and wait. They began to besiege Picking Stars Island and harassed it day and night. Although high-level warriors were not easy to deal with, not everyone in Meteor Fall Lake was a powerhouse. According to the news, there were only 3,000 to 4,000 people left in Meteor Fall Lake. Killing one meant one less. Killing one of them was a huge achievement. The members of the Lin family also stayed on the Picking Stars Island. They knew that if they left the Picking Stars Island, they would be in a state of disunity. A long and difficult tug-of-war began on Picking Stars Island. In the face of billions of crusaders, the Lin family's battle wasn't easy. Occasionally, there would be warriors from the Fallen Star Lake who would die in battle. After all, there were some deity-level experts in the enemy's army. The flames of war engulfed the entire Fallen Star Lake. Looking down from the Picking Stars Island, one could see that the entire horizon was filled with the battleships of the Crusaders. There was not a single gap in the sky or on the ground. The immense pressure was enough to cause those with weak wills to collapse on the spot. However, the Lin family could accept this situation. A stalemate was a battle that dragged on for as long as possible. Perhaps a turning point would appear one day. Primordial Realm, Wasteland Continent. The vastness of the primordial realm was beyond imagination. The empire that Lin Jun was in previously was only one side of the primordial realm continent. It was said that no one could cross the endless sea of stars from the primordial realm to the other side. In fact, the other side of the endless sea of stars was either a world where foreign races ran rampant or a barren land. The Wasteland Continent was a place without borders or political power. Those who dared to train in the Wasteland Continent were all true experts. However, there wasn't a true youth. Because a warrior's cultivation required time, It was impossible for a youth to achieve too much. However, there was a youth who was trekking on the continent. The youth was only 15 years old, but he had already reached the immortal realm, which was rare. In front of him was a vast expanse of yellow sand. Occasionally, desert plants like cacti could be seen in some places. Leaning on the edge of a sand dune, the youth was facing a group of desert lizards. These lizards were ferocious beasts. They were naturally powerful and cruel. Furthermore, they were highly toxic. Ordinary immortal realm warriors would have no chance of survival if they encountered them. However, the youth didn't care about these at all. When the lizards pounced on him, he used his palms to kill them easily. Every move was exquisite to the extreme. He was always able to avoid those fatal attacks by a hair's breadth. Every time he attacked, he was always able to injure the lizard's fatal weakness. In less than a minute, the hundreds of lizards in front of him had become corpses. The youth casually pulled over a lizard's corpse and sat down. Using his palm as a knife, he easily cut off a piece of meat. Flames appeared in his palm, instantly roasting the meat and swallowing it in a few bites. With a raise of his right hand, a clear spring appeared out of thin air. As the cold spring water entered his mouth, the youth leaned on the sand dune in satisfaction. Opening the dimensional universe, there was news about the battle at Fallen Star Lake everywhere. Latest report. Emperor Heavenly Soul Emperor has already led the 4 major tribes of demons and monsters to Fallen Star Lake yesterday. Heavenly Soul's arrival has already announced the arrival of the Lin family's doomsday. The first battle at Fallen Star Lake started 2 days ago. Under Heavenly Soul Emperor's command, the demon commander and the Lin family's matriarch, Su Mingwei, encountered each other near Picking Stars Island. After a fierce battle, Su Mingwei and Mayor Lin worked together to kill 6 demon generals. However, Su Mingwei was also injured in the battle. She was covered by the people of Fallen Star Lake and retreated to Picking Stars Island. The armies of the Ghost Race and the Monster Race have already arrived at the shore of Picking Stars Island. A great battle is about to break out. The doomsday is approaching. Where will the women of the Lin family go? Heroes at the end of their road. If Lin Jun were alive, would he be heartbroken when he saw this scene? One report after another filled his eyes. After reading for a while, the youth closed the dimensional universe. This was Lin Jun's second reincarnation. This time, he was an orphan who was abandoned before he even opened his eyes. With the body of a baby, Lin Jun forcibly survived in this man-eating place. Have you ever seen a baby crawling to catch ants and scorpions to satisfy his hunger before he was a month old? Only Lin Jun, a person whose perseverance had exceeded the limits of human imagination, was able to walk out a path of survival. In this life, his aptitude was even better. He lived alone and reached immortality at the age of 15. In this life, he didn't have any friends, relatives, or anyone who knew him. However, when he reached adulthood, he traveled billions of miles and opened a dimensional universe in a demon race city. After the primal chaos green lotus awakened, Lin Jun's survival was no longer a problem. However, he still had his own goals in this life. Nurture. It wasn't the pregnancy of a woman, but the birth of something new from within the primal chaos green lotus. This was what Lin Jun needed the most. After being rejected by the highest council, he would never be able to obtain the ruler's divine crystal and become a ruler. This blocked Lin Jun's path of advancement. What Lin Jun wanted to do was to nurture a new divine crystal within the primal chaos green lotus. Chapter 1383. If Lin Jun were to say that he wanted to nurture a ruler's divine crystal, those rulers would definitely laugh their heads off. There was a fixed number of rulers' divine crystals. When the universe was born, there were 81 rulers' divine crystals. There was no more. Later on, some people studied why there were only 81 rulers' divine crystals. If a powerhouse kept cultivating, would it be possible for them to produce a ruler's divine crystal, just like when they became a god? However, countless facts told people that this was impossible. Rulers' divine crystals couldn't be nurtured by humans. This was fixed when the universe was born. It was just like how there were the 5 elements between heaven and earth, and the universe had dark matter. People needed to replenish their energy to survive. There was no reason. It was just like that. If one wanted to nurture a ruler's divine crystal, it would have to be a story from another universe. However, this was what Lin Jun wanted to do now. Nurturing a ruler's divine crystal wasn't about a ruler's divine crystal appearing out of thin air. It was about nurturing a world, a real world. Although the inner world of the god was also a real world, that world still belonged to the scope of this universe. It was in accordance with the principles of heaven and earth, and was within the rules. Now, the Chaos Green Lotus was about to nurture a new world, a small universe. Lin Jun didn't know where this world would appear if it was successfully nurtured. It could be said that it would be within the Chaos Green Lotus. This was something that only the reborn Chaos Green Lotus could do. At this moment, Lin Jun vaguely felt the meaning of his nirvana. The Chaos Green Lotus had absorbed the power of 3 universes' origins and had its own chaos chi. It was just that when it was alive, it had a close relationship with Lin Jun. It was still within the scope of this universe. After Lin Jun's nirvana, he had reawakened the Chaos Green Lotus, allowing the lotus to be reborn. The lotus seed within the lotus had swallowed up Lin Jun's power in the past. He didn't know its exact value, but today he knew. This lotus seed could nurture a new universe. When Lin Jun was reborn in his second life, he knew the meaning of this rebirth. This could be said to be a great undertaking, one that no one had ever done or even dared to think about. Nurturing a new universe would also nurture a new galaxy, a new planet, and new life. Comparing the birth of a universe to the rise and fall of a family, which was more important? The birth of a universe and the appearance of the sovereign godly crystal. Compared to his family, which was more important? First, he was reborn. Then, he would undergo 9 lives of nirvana. If he succeeded, Lin Jun did not dare to imagine what position he would reach. Compared to his previous life, which was more important? The epiphany of the first life was to let go of one's obsession. Lin Jun had done it, but what about the second life? He felt that he had let it go. Another important reason was that even if Lin Jun wanted to deal with the matters of his previous life, he didn't have the ability to do so. Whether it was doing things or fighting, Lin Jun had always liked to plan before acting, deciding the fate of a universe with a single move. As long as there was a sliver of a chance, Lin Jun would work 100 times harder. But this time, he couldn't do anything about the Fallen Star Lake Holy Land. Even if he went, he would only be courting death. Moreover, what identity would he use to go? How to cross the endless sea of stars was an unavoidable problem. All sorts of objective reasons determined that Lin Jun could only be a spectator for the rest of his life. After looking at the news of the battle at Fallen Star Lake again, Lin Jun closed the dimensional universe. Life is short. Only by living well in the present can there be a future. The dimensional universe's information was cut off. The dimensional universe's chip was removed. Perhaps no one would do this. Even if they died, no one would think of cutting off the dimensional universe and completely cutting off contact with the outside world. Especially with Lin Jun's situation. How could he cut off everything from his previous life so easily? But he did it. Since he was powerless, he didn't want to disturb his mind. I wish you all good luck. After saying this, Lin Jun completely forgot about the past and entered a state of cultivation again. The goal of this life was to make the primal chaos lotus seed a true origin. The origin was the original form of the universe. Everything appeared from a single point and started from a single point. As for obtaining the sovereign godly crystal, it was probably not something that could be done in 2 or 3 lifetimes. In the endless wilderness, there were countless dangerous places. Lin Jun began a new adventure. His nirvana was not limitless. At most, it would be 100 years. If he couldn't complete the mission of nirvana, Lin Jun would also disappear. There would be no next life. Therefore, he had to make the best use of his time. The battle in the primordial realm was in full swing. After the Emperor Race's Tian led the 4 races army, the real battle began. On the second day, everyone thought that Tian would organize the army and do some pre-battle mobilization. But they didn't expect Tian Po to do the opposite. The next day, he gathered all his forces and suddenly launched an all-out attack. Picking Star's island fell into a great crisis. Under the leadership of Tian Po, a godly king expert, the various races' army killed their way to the center of the island and to the Lin family's residence. More than 3,000 Picking Star's island warriors, half of them died in battle on this day. At the critical moment, Feng Qingwan used the Phoenix's Nirvana divine skill. With the power of a godly king, she attacked the four races' army head-on and seriously injured Tian Po. Tian Po's injury was not light. The 1 billion soldiers of the four races' army were all wiped out by Feng Qingwan's attack. This battle hurt the vitality of Fallen Star Lake and also hurt the Alliance's vitality. The Heavenly Soul's carefully planned move failed just like that. The Alliance army that carried a powerful aura and was determined to win had also lost their spirit. But Fallen Star Lake also lost Feng Qingwan, the most powerful godly king-level combatant. It was still hard to say who would win or lose the battle later on. Feng Qingwan's Phoenix's Nirvana was not rebirth. It only allowed Feng Qingwan to return to her initial small Phoenix state. But it was still hard to say when she could return to her peak state. Feng Qingwan could no longer participate in the battle at Fallen Star Lake. It would depend on the remaining people of the Lin family. The battle didn't stop because of Feng Qingwan's Nirvana and Tian Po's serious injury. The Alliance continued to attack fiercely. They couldn't give the Lin family any chance to breathe. As long as Tian Po's injury recovered, it would be the time for the Lin family to perish. It was believed that at this time, no one would come to help the Lin family. The capsizing of this ship was only a matter of time. The difficult battle continued for another 3 years. For the past 3 years, there were people dying in Fallen Star Lake. There were less than 500 people left. And Feng Qingwan's Nirvana recovery was still far away. Chapter 1384. Among the Allied forces besieging Fallen Star Lake, Monarch Race's Heaven Soul was on the largest battleship. Inside the battleship, Heaven Soul slowly got up from his bed and bowed to the 3 people in front of him. Thank you for your help. If not for you, I wouldn't have been able to recover in 10,000 years. In front of him were 3 godly king-level experts. One of them was from Soul Locking Platform, one from Free City, and one from Double Tree Garden. The 3 of them were famous in the Yuan realm. They were the guards of the 3 sacred lands. In the past few thousand years, the 4 sacred lands had left the other 3 sacred lands behind because of the appearance of Fallen Star Lake's Linjun. Without a powerful sacred land guarding, it was difficult to attract other warriors to learn. Therefore, the 3 sacred lands had sent godly king-level experts to guard the sacred lands to ensure that they could attract talents and provide fresh blood for the forbidden lands of the universe. The 3 sacred lands were now guarded by godly king-level experts, but no one expected that the 3 of them would appear on Heaven Soul's battleship. The guard of Free City waved his hand at Heaven Soul. There's no need to thank me. I didn't save you for nothing. You haven't forgotten our agreement, right? Heaven Soul had completely recovered. He stood up straight. Of course not. After conquering the Fallen Star Lake's sacred land, you can have a first pick of the items inside. The guard of Soul Locking Platform nodded. That's right. We don't care about the Lin family. Although those women are beautiful, they are not our target. Our target is the Fallen Star Lake's sacred land martial arts. That's right. The Fallen Star Lake's sacred land's martial arts are unique. Lin Jin stole the martial arts of our 3 sacred lands back, then to achieve what he has today. Now that he's dead, this debt will be borne by the Fallen Star Lake sacred land. We will take their martial arts. Heaven Soul thought for a moment. I have something I don't understand. Aren't the 4 sacred lands united? Why are you attacking Fallen Star Lake? That's a childish question. How can there be true unity in the world? There are only eternal benefits. Back then, Lin Jin stole our martial arts. Why can't we give him a taste of his own medicine? Heaven's Soul laughed. That's good. In that case, let's work together tomorrow and completely end the Lin family. Thinking of the fear of being dominated by Feng Qingwan's heaven-burning flame, Heaven's Soul couldn't wait to take revenge. A new round of battle began. Heaven's soul charged forward again. He felt that he had recovered. Without Feng Qingwan, no one in the Lin family could stop him. However, on the way forward, a celestial figure with a long sword in her hand and a fluttering green robe, who looked like a lady in an ink painting, blocked his path. If you want to enter the Fallen Star Lake, you'll have to ask my sword first. She was a quasi-god king, and the heavenly soul knew who she was. Lin Zhen's wife, the former crown princess of the southern Liang royal family, Ning Qingxian. Ning Qingxuan's strength and talent were definitely not worse than anyone else. If Feng Qingxian hadn't gone through Nirvana once, her current realm would definitely not surpass her. A peak quasi-god king, only a step away from becoming a god king. Against Heaven's soul, although Ning Qingxian was at a disadvantage, she still made it difficult for Heaven's soul to advance. This reality almost drove Heaven's soul crazy. It was fine if he couldn't defeat Lin Zhen, but he was also repeatedly defeated by his wife. Damn it, help me. Seeing that he couldn't take down Ning Qingxian, Heaven's soul finally asked for help. 3 god kings from the other 3 holy lands of the primordial realm appeared. Seeing these 3 people, the Lin family, who were still fighting hard, felt their hearts turn cold. With Ning Qingxuan's powerful strength, they could still hold on. However, with the sudden appearance of 3 god kings, there was no way they could fight this battle. Could it be that today is our last day? And Ning murmured, "Little sister Ning, don't be afraid. We're here to help you." In the sky, 2 white lights came at lightning speed. When the figures appeared, everyone was stunned. 2 beautiful women who were a perfect combination of purity and charm, capable of taking one's life, appeared. Any one of them would be a calamity capable of overturning the world. And Ning was stunned. "You are Snow White by Susu. We're also husband Lin Zhen's wives." The faces of the Lin family's women changed, but they soon felt relieved. Lin Zhen was already gone, and his fate was unknown. There was no point in dwelling on this matter. Moreover, they had rushed over from far away to save them. This was enough to prove their character. However, Ning Qingxian, Su Mingyue, and the others couldn't come over to meet them. They could only look at them from afar. We'll talk about this later. Little sister and Ning, let's guard Fallen Star Lake together today. Snow White and Bai Susu didn't delay. They immediately joined the battle. The Bai family sisters blocked the other 3 Holy Lands guards. The intense battle between the 2 sides caused Fallen Star Lake's water to fill the sky. It was like the end of the world had arrived. 3 against 2. The 3 Holy Lands guards had no advantage. The 2 sides were evenly matched. Meanwhile, the Bai family sisters also took care of Ning Qingxian, who wasn't strong enough. In a 4 against 3 situation, they were still able to fight evenly. The fierce battle lasted from day to night. In the end, it was actually a draw. Seeing that they couldn't increase their victory, Heavenly Soul and the others finally retreated. This draw marked the beginning of the protracted war at Meteor Lake. The 3 Holy Lands wanted to use this opportunity to eliminate Fallen Star Lake and eliminate one of their competitors. However, they didn't expect Lin Zhen to have 2 divine king wives. This plan failed again. Now, they had nowhere to retreat. They couldn't just return to the Holy Lands like this. They could only continue to fight. However, the Lin family's tenacity exceeded their expectations. The Fallen Star Lake seemed to be in imminent danger, but they were always at the last gasp. Repeated attacks, repeated failures. Sometimes, the Lin family's female generals would even launch sneak attacks and kill many of the Allied forces' experts. The long battle lasted for 100 years. There was no sign of it stopping, nor was there any light of victory for one side. It seemed like this battle would continue forever. And in these 100 years, Lin Zhen, who was living a second life, was about to reach the end of his life. In these 100 years, Lin Zhen had never left Wasteland Continent. Beside him, corpses were piled up like mountains, forming a white bone-forbidden zone with a diameter of 10 kilometers. This was only caused by him in 10 years. Later on, the demonic beasts of Wasteland Continent had to take a detour when they came here. Lin Zhen sat cross-legged in the yellow sand. He sat there for 80 years. The yellow sand sealed Lin Zhen's entire body. He was like an exquisite sand sculpture. Tonight, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. A meteor streaked across wasteland continent's atmosphere. An undetectable starlight landed on the sand sculpture. Cracked. The sand sculpture quietly cracked open. An unbelievably terrifying aura spread out from here. Chapter 1385. Within Lin Zhen's body, the awakened chaos green lotus was undergoing an unprecedented change. Around that lotus seed, 3 strands of universe origin energy revolved. With Lin Zhen's current aptitude, it could be said to be terrifying. After nearly 100 years of continuous cultivation, the power accumulated had already reached an unbelievable level. In these 100 years, the power he accumulated had already reached saturation, enough to nurture a new world. And now, what he lacked was only an opportunity. Until today, on the last day of Lin Zhen's second life, he made the final breakthrough. My power is enough. This new world will appear today. Spatial power rise. Lin Zhen's comprehension of spatial power had already reached the peak. Now is the time to use it. A strand of spatial power directly entered the green lotus seed. Spatial power and universe origin energy fused. These powers were invisible and untouchable, but they really existed. This was a stage that was about to be born, but not born. Everything had not truly begun yet. In an instant, the surroundings were filled with chaos. Countless memories flooded his mind. Lin Zhen's tragic first life, his second life after his rebirth, his nirvana life, his current life, and even his future lives. Countless images came in a mess, each one fiercely attacking Lin Zhen's spiritual sea, wanting to destroy his actions. Because this action of Lin Zhen's was not tolerated by heaven and earth. The universe was the universe. There was only one, and it was unique. At least in this space, the universe was the only one. In this space, a real world that transcended the rules and did not belong here was not allowed to be born. Every image could move one's heart. For example, the warmth of a family, the love of parents, the gentleness of a wife, the cuteness of a child. For example, the excitement of obtaining a cultivation method, or the joy of killing an enemy. Every memory was so real. A moment of carelessness might interrupt his current actions, and all his efforts would be in vain. Lin Zhen bit his tongue, and a stream of blood spurted out. The pain in his mouth, accompanied by a salty taste, cleared his mind. I have the delusion breaker, I, and a heart of stone. What can these illusions do to me? Lin Zhen roared. His divine power suddenly burst forth. With my blood, my boundless will, and my supreme wish, I will open this world. I, Lin Zhen, am never willing to be controlled by others. Since the Supreme Council is the one that dominates this universe, I will be above the Supreme Council. Who cares about a sovereign? I will create my own divine crystals. Evil tyrant of the sky, evildoers, retreat. New world open. The primal chaos green lotus suddenly appeared in front of him, and all the illusions around him vanished. The 3 origins of the universe revolved, and the power of space condensed. The center of the green lotus seed of chaos seemed to be lightly pricked by an extremely thin needle. Pooh! With a soft sound, the sky collapsed, and the earth caved in. The entire savage continent trembled at this moment. Within a radius of 50 billion light years, it was as if an earthquake of magnitude 20 or above had occurred. It was an earthquake that could cause planets to collapse. Volcanoes erupted, seas surged, and meteorites fell. The stars in the sky exploded like fireworks. This was a collision between the new spatial energy and the original spatial energy. Within the green lotus seed, a new space was born. Although it was only an extremely small, this was indeed a power that did not belong to this universe. This was another world, the prototype of a real world. In this doomsday-like scene, Lin Zhen was the core of the world. His long hair fluttered, his clothes were torn, and his entire body was ignited with rising flames. These flames were about to burn him. This was the sign of the second life's nirvana ending. However, Lin Zhen's mission was not over yet. He clasped his hands together and formed hand seals. Power of time fused. When the power of space was injected, only a point was born, also known as the origin point. However, this point did not have the concept of time, and space had not truly appeared. If there was no power of time, it would never split apart and remain there forever. Space was the foundation of time. If there was no space, time would not exist. And time was the meaning of space's existence. Without the flow of time, no matter how big the space was, it was just a dead object. The power of the law of time was injected into the chaos green lotus seed. Fortunately, Lin Zhen had grasped the last profound meaning of the law of time reversal. Otherwise, he would not have been able to do this. Because of time reversal, it would occasionally appear in the universe. Without this law as the foundation, the universe would not be complete. When the power of time was injected, this point began to slowly revolve. It did not revolve along the orbit like a planet, nor did it begin to split like the universe exploding. It was the combination of space and time, the support of the universe's origin power, that allowed it to begin to give birth to the power of chaos. The power of chaos was the combination of all elemental powers. However, at this time, Lin Zhen, as the creator, also needed his guidance. His hands flicked again and again, and elemental powers began to surge. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, light, lightning. Together with the dark matter evolved from the power of chaos in Lin Zhen's chaos green lotus. It began to form new chaos. This chaos was the initial form of the universe's birth. When the power of chaos accumulated to a certain extent, the universe would explode and heaven and earth would open, or in some other form, but this universe would definitely appear. And as the creator, Lin Zhen could clearly feel that in the chaos, there were a few places where power was condensing. It was a phenomenon that was about to evolve into strange objects. First, in the center of the chaos, a blurry mass of power began to evolve into a rhombus that was 1,000,000 times smaller than a bacterium. Lin Zhen was very excited. He knew that once this rhombus was successfully evolved, it would become a new ruler's god crystal. With Lin Zhen's power, of course, it was impossible for him to evolve a world as big as the universe. It was also impossible for him to produce 81 ruler's god crystals at once. Being able to produce one was enough. This is my god crystal, my ruler's god crystal. When it matures, it will be the day I become a ruler. In addition to this god crystal, there were 2 other masses of light that were also condensing slightly. It was just that he did not know what treasure would be born. Lin Zhen had no way of knowing now, but did he have the time to find out? Because the time for his second nirvana had arrived. He opened his eyes slightly and glanced at the fallen star lake, but he withdrew his delusion breaker midway. Forget it. A new nirvana journey is about to begin. I can only wish you good luck. If you are still well after my 9th nirvana, we will continue our previous fate. Goodbye, my nameless second nirvana. Chapter 1386. The battle at Meteorfall Lake was in a complete stalemate. The female generals of the Lin family, without the support of their husbands, fought with their enemies on the battlefield. Such a battle was very beneficial to their growth. Whether it was Lin Zhen's 6 wives, Angel and the other 2 women, or his daughter, all of them were very strong and brave. Under Lin Zhen's influence, they placed great importance on self-protection during battle. They would never give the enemy any chance. Even Lin Ping and Lin performed well in battle. Under the leadership of the Lin family, the warriors of Meteorfall Lake were in a difficult situation. Although many of them died, everyone who survived improved by leaps and bounds in battle. There were constantly people breaking through and advancing. The Alliance army of 10 billion could not take a single step forward. 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. Time flew by quickly. No matter what the Alliance army did, they were unable to make any substantial progress. It was unknown when this battle would end. The godly kings of the Alliance army had already begun to contact those who could help, but it was unknown when true experts would arrive. But no matter what, the Alliance army would not retreat. They had come with such vigor. If they returned with their tails between their legs, it would be a joke. They still believed that if this continued, there would be a day when they conquered Meteorfall Lake. Primordial Realm, or Kingdom. Beastmen were a pure race. They weren't demonic beasts, nor were they spirit beasts, nor were they giant beasts of the starry sky. They were half-human, half-beast life forms. They looked like humans, but they had many characteristics of beasts. This way, they had a certain learning ability like humans, as well as the strong vitality of beasts. They were considered a powerful race. However, this race had a huge limitation. Their perception was not as good as humans, and their vitality was not as good as true beasts. They were a race that had a strong start, but a low upper limit. For many years, the Beastmen were only able to make a difference in the lower-level planets. The higher the level of civilization, the more insignificant the Beastmen were. There was even a popular saying among the race: orcs had no geniuses. Some of the surrounding countries would often come back to bully the Orc Kingdom and capture some orcs back to work. They could understand human language and had strength. They were born to be slaves. In such a situation, the short-tempered and straightforward orcs were powerless to change anything. They hoped that a true genius would appear in their tribe and lead the Beastmen out of their predicament. But now, such a genius had appeared. 10 years ago, the Tiger clan gave birth to a new Beastman baby. He was fairer and more handsome than the average Beastman, and he was more like a human. The baby's parents named him Lin Hu because he was born in the forest. Beastmen didn't have surnames, but tigers all had the word tiger. The Tiger tribe was the second largest tribe among the Beastmen. The current ruling tribe was the Lion tribe. When Lin Hu was born, he was laughed at by the other Beastmen because he looked very weak. But after Lin Hu was born, he brought countless shock to the Beastmen. When he was 1 year old, Lin Hu was able to uproot a large tree. When he was 2 years old, he was able to smash rocks. When he was 3 years old, he was able to climb mountains. At the age of 4, Lin Hu was able to defeat 7 or 8-year-old half-grown Beastmen. At the age of 5, no one below the age of adulthood was his match. At the age of 6, Lin Hu began to challenge the experts of the various clans. At the age of 7, he rarely lost, and at the age of 8, he was practically invincible. At the age of 9, a human tribe came to capture Beastmen. The leader had even reached the Three-Flower Realm. The Three-Flower Realm was equivalent to the strength of the Orc tribe leader because it was difficult for Beastmen to cultivate to immortality. In the end, Lin Hu stepped out and easily killed this three-flowered human. This caused the entire race's eyeballs to pop out. At the age of 10, which was the day Beastmen reached adulthood, Lin Hu directly announced that he wanted to challenge the tribe leader. The Lion tribe leader was actually afraid of Lin Hu and didn't dare to accept the challenge. He passed the position of tribe leader to Lin Hu. After taking the position of tribe leader, Lin Hu began to lead the Orc army into battle. The so-called army was basically just a bystander. There were tens of thousands of honor guards. Thousands of people carried the large palanquin for Lin Hu, and the rest were in charge of logistics and waving flags. Everywhere he went, Lin Hu faced the enemy alone and easily conquered all the countries in all directions. After conquering, Lin Hu didn't occupy them. He only signed a contract with the leaders of the enemy countries, a treaty of non-aggression for 1,000 years. Those countries that couldn't defeat Lin Hu naturally didn't dare to say anything. They all swore on their souls that they wouldn't invade the Orc Kingdom for 1,000 years. In 100 years, Lin Hu conquered countless countries around and was basically able to completely guarantee the safety of the Orc Kingdom. Just as the Beastmen were overjoyed and thought that Lin Hu could lead them to conquer the world, Lin Hu suddenly died. Lin Hu's death was very strange. Without any warning, he suddenly told everyone that he was going to die. He asked the Beastmen not to invade the outside world and to focus on cultivation. He said that they would be safe for 1,000 years. As for after 1,000 years, that wasn't something he needed to worry about. After saying that, Lin Jun turned into a speck of light and disappeared, never to return. This made some female beastmen who admired Lin Hu extremely sad. Not being able to marry Lin Hu and give birth to a strong tiger cub for him was their life's regret. After the appearance of a genius in the Orc Kingdom, a genius also appeared in the machine race. He was invincible for 100 years and led the machine race to the peak. However, the genius of the machine race also left after 100 years. Later on, in the devil race's territory, a person who was known as the Star of Hope appeared. This was a member of the heavenly devil race. He was unbelievably powerful and was once regarded as the future clan leader. However, the future clan leader also died after 100 years. This made the devil race cry out loud. If this devil race was given a few hundred years to go to Fallen Star Lake, they believed that he could definitely break the current entanglement and completely defeat the Lin family. The elf race, the rock race, these two races had their own geniuses before. According to their records, their geniuses were extremely powerful. They even surpassed Lin Jun of the human race and the geniuses of other races. However, these geniuses had a weakness, which was that they died after 100 years. When this news spread, their people were extremely sad. Yet the geniuses died early. What a sad thing this was. Just as the various races were writing books and promoting their geniuses, no one knew that their so-called geniuses were actually the reincarnation of a person. From the third life to the seventh life, these 5 lives were the period of Lin Jun's growth. It was the time when he allowed the power within the Chaos Green Lotus to grow. This was a process of accumulation. As long as there were no accidents, he could pass it smoothly. Chapter 1387. Lin Jun's 8th reincarnation was born in a human tribe in the primordial realm. After the awakening of the first reincarnation and the nurturing of the second reincarnation, Lin Jun's reincarnations were a process of accumulating power. In the universe world within the Chaos Green Lotus, the power of chaos was constantly increasing. Usually, Lin Jun could clearly sense that the origin inside was becoming stronger. The terrifying power of chaos would occasionally overflow and be absorbed by Lin Jun. The power of chaos here was different from the universe Lin Jun was in. It was something from another world. Absorbing the power of 2 universes at the same time brought about a very surprising change. That was in Lin Jun's Dantian, the 2 streams of chaos intertwined. Time and space intertwined. The power of Lin Jun's universe was dominant, but the power of chaos in the new world was also gradually increasing. The new power brought Lin Jun the greatest pleasant surprise. It was that his divine power had actually improved again. Before Lin Jun's reincarnation, he had 70 million units of divine power as a peak pseudo-dominator. According to his calculations, when he reached peak pseudo-dominator in his 8th reincarnation, his divine power should be able to reach 100 million. With 70 million units of divine power before reincarnation, Lin Jun could already defeat many dominators. If he had 100 million units of divine power, then most dominators would not be his match. In Lin Jun's 7th reincarnation, before reincarnation, his power had already recovered to peak godly king. This 8th reincarnation was enough for him to recover to his pre-reincarnation state, or even surpass it. The divine realm had already opened in his 5th reincarnation. However, all of Lin Jun's weapons and treasures had been destroyed in order to block the combined attacks of 41 dominators. Now, he still did not have a suitable weapon. In his 7th reincarnation, Lin Jun was already thinking, if he could recover his power in his 8th reincarnation, then what about his 9th reincarnation? Could it be that he would directly reach the dominator level? Then what about the universe that had yet to be born in his Chaos Green Lotus seed? If he obtained the Dominator's divine crystal, what would happen? Before he could get an answer, Lin Jun arrived at his 8th reincarnation. From the moment he was born, Lin Jun knew his mission in this life. In this life, Lin Jun's mission was to survive for 100 years. Don't think that living on is easy. In this life, Lin Jun's identity will be made public. Other than the mysterious person who taught Lin Jun the Nirvana 9 Revolutions technique, No one else knew about Lin Jun's nirvana. And the one who announced this matter was not that mysterious person, but this world. Lin Jun's cultivation method was to open up a new world, a new universe. Of course, this was not allowed by the rules of the universe. Therefore, it was the universe origins will that announced Lin Jun's existence this time. The universe origins will wouldn't directly charge in, but it could make use of others to do the dirty work. The news of Lin Jun's resurrection would be announced on the day that Lin Jun reached adulthood. It would be a supreme mission. At that time, Lin Jun's situation and location would be exposed. Even Lin Jun's location could be directly seen in the dimensional universe, making it convenient for the people chasing after Lin Jun to go there. This was the universe origins will. Since Lin Jun wanted to open up a new world, then he would be an enemy of this old world. Just wait for the people of the old world to hunt you down. Moreover, the universe origins would also reward the person who killed Lin Jun. There was only one reward, but it was enough to make people go crazy. Guaranteed to become a dominator. Anyone below the dominator realm who killed Lin Jun would be given a dominator's divine crystal. Even if your realm was not enough, the universe origins will had a way to let your realm rise all the way. If the person who killed Lin Jun was a dominator, then they would be rewarded with a supreme weapon. A supreme weapon was an existence that surpassed the dominator's divine crystal. It was the most powerful weapon in the entire universe. Ordinary people thought that the dominator's divine crystal was the highest weapon, but that was not the case. Since the birth of the universe, there have been a total of 3 supreme weapon missions. This was a mission directly issued by the universe origins will. If one succeeded, they would obtain a supreme weapon. The first and second missions had been completed, but this was the 3rd time. It was not a dominator becoming a dominator, but a dominator obtaining a supreme weapon. This kind of temptation was not something ordinary people could resist. It was enough to turn family members into enemies, enough to make family members draw their swords. This was the price Lin Jun had to pay to create a new world, and that was to be an enemy of the old world, even an enemy of the entire universe. As long as Lin Jun could still be alive when Nirvana arrived, then he would have passed the old world's test, and his matter of opening up a new world would be allowed. If Lin Jun died, then everything would naturally be over, and there would be no Nirvana. According to the calculation of the time of adulthood in the human tribe where Lin Jun was born, Lin Jun would become an adult at 15 years old. In other words, when he was 15 years old, it would be the time for him to become an enemy of the entire universe. A total of 85 years. If Lin Jun could safely pass these 85 years, he would pass this life. In this life, when Lin Jun was born, his dimensional universe state was awakened. However, his artificial intelligence was still not Chris, but a cold robot. Within the dimensional universe, there was a huge countdown. The countdown was the time for Lin Jun to become an adult. There was still more than 14 years left. Knowing all this, Lin Jun was not surprised. Opening up a new world would naturally not be tolerated by the old world, and it was normal for him to be hunted down. However, he did not expect the universe origins will to be so ruthless as to directly issue a supreme mission. Perhaps others did not understand everything about Lin Jun, but the universe origin definitely understood. It knew that Lin Jun was very difficult to deal with, and it believed that killing Lin Jun was the most difficult thing. After reading the mission, Lin Jun smiled bitterly. This really thinks highly of me. It seems that the universe origin really thinks highly of me. In that case, I definitely can't stay in this human tribe. When I can leave, I must leave. I don't want to implicate the people here. Lin Jun was brewing a plan in his mind. He knew that this life was definitely going to be the most difficult one. It was almost impossible for him to survive under the pursuit of the entire universe. Therefore, he had to be prepared early. Time passed day by day. Lin Jun had awakened his power very early. His aptitude had reached an unbelievable level, and his strength had increased rapidly. However, he did not show it at all. Since he was young, he looked like an ordinary child without any talent for martial arts. Until the year he was 10 years old, Lin Jun followed his parents to climb a mountain. When he saw a bottomless abyss below, he missed a step and fell in. The surging river below swallowed Lin Jun and disappeared without a trace. His parents were sad, but there was nothing they could do. That day, the tribe held a small funeral for Lin Jun. During the funeral, Lin Jun stood on the crown of a tree in the distance. Looking at the people below, Lin Jun sighed slightly, turned around, and teleported away. Chapter 1388. The human tribe in the primordial realm that Lin Jun was in was miles away from the four great sacred lands. This distance determined that Lin Jun wouldn't be able to reach Fallen Star Lake even if he used all of his 100 years of nirvana to travel. Lin Jun began to flee. First, he had to find a very distant and uninhabited place. This way, even if someone came to kill him, they wouldn't be able to reach him in a short time. The place that Lin Jun chose was the Wasteland Continent. This was because the human tribe that he was born in wasn't very far from the Wasteland Continent. According to what Lin Jun knew, there were no sovereigns in the direction of the Wasteland Continent. The sovereigns knew Lin Jun's location and would come from all directions. It would take them at least 50 years to reach this place. Although Lin Jun hadn't recovered to his peak in 50 years, he should have the ability to deal with ordinary sovereigns. He cultivated as he traveled. Some used teleportation arrays, and some rode on thunderclouds. Lin Jun traveled further and further, gradually entering the depths of the Wasteland Continent. Before he reached the Wasteland Continent, he had already reached adulthood. On this day, everyone in the new territories, the primordial realm, certain star systems, forbidden areas of the universe, and the endless sea of stars, regardless of age or race, as long as they had a dimensional universe, was forced to receive a message. Supreme Mission. The Supreme Mission was just a legend in the universe. Most people didn't even know about the existence of the Supreme Mission. Those who could understand this level had to be at least at the quasi-sovereign level. Only then would they be able to find some clues. This was the first time that almost everyone had experienced a direct mission. Supreme missions were issued by the universe Origin's will. This was what the mission said. The current nameless human warrior is not tolerated by heaven and earth. He is rejected by all living things in the universe. His actions go against the principles of the universe. Heaven and earth will punish him. From today onwards, for 85 years, the nameless warrior's location will be announced by the universe Origin. Everyone can find this person's location through the coordinates of the dimensional universe. Anyone with a dimensional universe can go and kill him. Below the sovereign level, anyone who kills it will obtain the sovereign's godly crystal, and you'll definitely become a sovereign. The slaying of a paragon results in the acquisition of a paragon armament of unimaginable power. When this supreme mission was announced, almost the entire universe was in an uproar. This nameless warrior was too amazing. He could actually cause the universe's Origin to reject him and not tolerate him. The universe actually issued a supreme mission to kill him. This kind of mission was equivalent to being wanted by the entire universe. Moreover, this wasn't an ordinary bounty. It was a location-based bounty. In the dimensional universe, people could clearly see a light spot on one side of the primordial realm at the edge of the Wasteland Continent. It was rapidly moving inland. This was the first time many people knew of the existence of the Wild Continent. However, this was no longer important. What was important was that they had to kill this nameless warrior. What did martial artists cultivate for? Longevity? Invincible? All of this was too general. If he had to be more specific, he would have to become a sovereign. For the vast majority of martial artists, becoming a sovereign was their ultimate dream. To sovereigns, supreme equipment was the ultimate weapon. Those who obtained supreme equipment were almost impossible to defeat. They wouldn't die and could even kill others. This was the ultimate goal of martial artists. Therefore, this supreme mission was in line with the desires of almost everyone in the universe. Although this nameless warrior was probably not easy to kill, what if they succeeded? Wouldn't that be better than billions of years of hard work? Martial artists all believed in miracles. As long as they worked hard enough, they could really become that lucky person. The entire universe was in an uproar, other than those martial artists from the new territories who felt that they had no chance all the other martial artists were tempted. Of course, there were many rational people who calculated the probability and felt that their chances of success were too low and gave up. However, even if 1 out of 10,000 people felt that they had a chance, the number was already unbelievably high. Some martial artists left the primordial realm and began preparing for a long journey. They followed the coordinates and tried to reach the wasteland continent as soon as possible. Some martial artists left certain galaxies. Many of them lived in seclusion and didn't care about worldly affairs. However, they felt that they would never have a chance to become sovereign. They definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity. There were even many experts who came out of the universe's forbidden lands. In their opinion, this mission could only be completed by experts. Those from the primordial realm and certain galaxies were just there to make up the numbers. What was even more impressive was that many sovereigns couldn't sit still. With the sovereigns taking action, the nameless warrior would obediently be captured. The sovereigns left their places and began to head to the wasteland continent. For a time, going to the wasteland continent to complete the supreme mission became the hottest topic in the universe. Countless people left their hometowns and places of seclusion. It was like millions of water droplets converging into the sea, heading straight for the wasteland continent. Lin Jun wasn't completely unaware of this situation. He had already calculated very accurately. Within 50 billion light years of the wasteland continent, there were almost no intelligent life forms. This distance was enough for those people to travel for decades. If Lin Jun wanted to hide for a longer time, the best place was the core of the wasteland continent. Although he might be blocked and turned into a dumpling there, Lin Jun wasn't afraid. A few decades later, the advantage of numbers wouldn't be a threat to Lin Jun at all. The only ones that Lin Jun was truly worried about were the sovereigns. The sovereigns were also divided into different levels. The truly powerful sovereigns were actually the 17 members of the Supreme Council. These 17 people were the ones who posed the greatest threat to Lin Jun. Perhaps there were less than 17. Now that Sunflower Scar had become one of the Supreme Council, she probably wouldn't be a real threat to Lin Jun. Of course, that was on the premise that she knew Lin Jun's identity. There was also Lonely Star Fisherman, his teacher. There was also the master of the Fallen Star Lake, Sacred Land. Lin Jun already knew that the masters of the 4 sacred lands were also sovereigns. However, whether it was the master of the Fallen Star Lake or Lonely Star Fisherman, they wouldn't be a threat to Lin Jun if his identity was exposed. Before that, even Sunflower Scar could become Lin Jun's enemy. Before my divine power fully recovers, it will be very dangerous for me to face a sovereign. Before that happens, I have to raise my own strength. That's the sovereign battle skill. A new universe was being born. During this process, Lin Jun gained a deeper understanding and finally made some breakthroughs in his comprehension of the sovereign battle skill. If he succeeded in comprehending it, Lin Jun would be able to create his own battle skill. This battle skill would be even stronger than the one that Lin Jun had comprehended with Zi Ying's help. It will be his true trump card. Chapter 1389. At the edge of the wild continent, Lin Jun wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at the rising sun. He couldn't remember how many suns he had passed. Running at the speed of light, he would see a new sun after a certain distance and leave the previous one far behind. Running on a thundercloud was a difficult thing to do. Night and day could change in an instant. Normal people would find it hard to get used to. After descending from the sky, Lin Jun decided to rest for a while. He was now 20 years old and had left the human tribe for 10 years. After 10 years of running, he finally got close to the wild continent. According to Lin Jun's previous experience, there shouldn't be anyone here. There were only a few monsters that hadn't developed intelligence. He should be safe for now. The closest area with intelligent life will take me 10 years to get there. Moreover, those creatures aren't very strong and don't pose much of a threat to me. If I want to meet others, it'll be at least 30 years later. With such a relaxed time, Lin Jun didn't have much wariness in his heart. After coming down from the thundercloud, he found a sand dune and sat down. His divine world had already opened. With a thought, Lin Jun took out some fruits and food from the divine world. After 20 years in this life, Lin Jun had already reached the peak of mid-god. In truth, he didn't need to eat at all. Eating was just a habit. It wasn't necessary. Picking up an apple, Lin Jun bit off half of it. Then, he pondered a problem. That was the problem of the ruler's battle skill. I learned the primal chaos finger from Ziying. Although it's also a ruler's battle skill, I didn't create it myself. I can only learn it simply and can't cultivate it to a higher level. A true ruler's battle skill has to be completely comprehended by myself. After eating the remaining half of the apple in one bite, Lin Jun really wanted to study his two cosmic forces. These two powers intertwined in his body. Lin Jun felt that the ruler's battle skill that belonged solely to him was within, but he couldn't find a way to do it. This feeling was maddening. Before he could swallow the apple in his mouth, a sudden gust of wind blew. Whoosh! Lin Jun's long hair was pulled straight by the wind. He suddenly felt a sense of danger. Enemy! Lin Jun was shocked. Just based on this aura, the person who came was definitely not simple. He swallowed the apple in his mouth and stood up, but the person had already appeared. On the opposite sand dune, a person appeared. Dressed in white, he stood upright. He carried two long swords on his back in a crisscross fashion. His features were cold and arrogant. He was a handsome man. Divine King. Lin Jun was startled in his heart. He did not expect to actually encounter Divine King here. If Lin Jun was already 30 or 40 years old, becoming a godly king would not be a problem. However, Lin Jun was only 20 years old. No matter how heaven-defying his talent was, it was impossible for him to become a godly king in 20 years. A peak god would be able to insta-kill a high god Lin Jun. Against a quasi-god king, he would be able to win. But against a god king, it was hard to say, especially since this god king's aura was astonishing. He was definitely not a weakling. The white-robed god king looked at Lin Jun. He first looked him up and down a few times before suddenly smiling. A supreme mission is one of the most difficult missions in the universe. But from the looks of it today, there seems to be some hope. Lin Jun was silent for a moment. You came quickly enough. Haha, it's a coincidence. I came to the Wasteland continent to help a friend look for a type of demon beast blood. I happened to pass by here and happened to receive a supreme mission. I looked at your route, and after some calculations, I waited here. The white-robed God King's face revealed a trace of pride. This is called a blessed person does not need to worry. Although I am very curious as to what kind of heartless thing you did to provoke the universe's origin to issue a supreme mission, reason tells me that it's better to avoid trouble. It's better to end you as soon as possible and obtain the qualification to become a dominator. Clang! The white-robed God King pulled out a sword and said to Lin Jun, Nameless warrior, remember, the person who killed you is called the Yin Yang King. You will know who killed you when you die. Before he finished speaking, the sword struck out. This sword light was like the first ray of sunlight in the sky. It instantly pierced through the boundless darkness and headed straight for Lin Jun. A fierce aura of extreme yang rushed over like a dragon crossing the sky. As soon as the other party attacked, the experienced and knowledgeable Lin Jun knew that he had encountered a formidable opponent. If he was at his peak, he could kill this God King with a single finger. But now, the other party's strength was definitely at the peak of the God King realm. It would be very difficult for him to win, especially this Yang sword. It actually faintly showed the embryonic form of a dominator battle skill. If this person becomes a dominator, he will definitely be a powerhouse among dominators. Lin Jun quickly made a judgment. He did not want to be too entangled with the Yin Yang King. He raised his hand and used his strongest move, Primal Chaos Finger. With the point of his finger, a sandstorm swept up and attacked the Yin Yang King. But this time, Lin Jun's dominator battle skill was not unstoppable. Instead, it was in a stalemate with the other party's battle skill. The intense collision of air currents caused a huge sandstorm to form in the surroundings. As for the Yin Yang King, he was shocked by Lin Jun's attack. He could clearly sense that his battle skill was below Lin Jun's. If it weren't for his cultivation being high enough, he would have already been defeated. Damn it, even most God Kings cannot block my Yang sword. This nameless warrior is only at the intermediate God realm, but he can block it head-on. If he becomes a God King, He will be incredible. No wonder, no wonder. No wonder it's a supreme mission. If I don't complete it now, it will be even more difficult in the future. The Yin-Yang King gritted his teeth, and a second sword appeared. The first sword shone with golden light, like the sun. When the second sword was unsheathed, a moonlight as bright as autumn water appeared and attacked from the other side. One sword was extreme yang, while the other was extreme yin. The two extreme powers perfectly merged, instantly doubling the battle skill's power. This was the first time Lin Jun had seen such a battle skill. It was different from ice and fire, light and darkness. This pure yin and yang energy collided, causing Lin Jun to sigh in amazement. The pressure in front of him suddenly increased. In terms of absolute power, it had already surpassed Lin Jun's current limits. However, Lin Jun never relied on one method in battle. Seeing that his opponent's attack was fierce, Lin Jun directly used his ultimate skill, innate baleful destruction lightning. Ion. Lin Jun's innate baleful death lightning had already recovered. However, Lin Jun had never used it before. He was currently not strong enough. Every time he used it, it would take 10 years to recover. He was reluctant to use it. However, he couldn't care about that now. Dealing with it quickly was the right thing to do. This type of lightning that surpassed the speed of light was something that even most sovereigns could not dodge, much less god kings. The Yin-Yang King, who had originally held the advantage, was struck. Death Chi immediately surrounded his body. With a miserable cry, he died on the spot. Lin Jun raised his hand and received the other party's 2 decent swords. Then he fell to the ground. Chapter 1390. In Lin Jun's mind, the sovereign battle technique was a joint attack. Joint attacks weren't a new technique. Many martial artists had studied them. There were many joint attack techniques in this world that could be used. For example, ice and fire, light and darkness. When these opposing elements were gathered together, they could produce a huge explosive force. This was the foundation of battle techniques. The Yin-Yang monarch's Yin-Yang combined attack was clearly a higher level of joint attack. If it wasn't for Lin Jun's sovereign battle technique and the heavenly fiend deathly lightning, the result today would be hard to say. This was an enemy that couldn't be defeated with pure battle techniques. Seeing the other party's battle technique, the cloth that had been covering Lin Jun's mind seemed to have been removed. Sitting cross-legged on the sand dune, Lin Jun's eyes looked into the distance without focus. His mind suddenly became clear. That's right, joint attack. Why didn't I think of that? Whether it's an elemental joint attack or a yin-yang joint attack, this level isn't what I want. The strongest joint attack in my mind is a dimensional joint attack. The universe I'm in is a dimensional world. The universe I created is another dimensional world. The other dimensional worlds are repelled by the dimensional forces of my world. That's why the universe's origin issued a supreme mission to hunt me down. These two universal forces are opposites. At least, before the new universe is recognized, they are opposites. How can any other form of power be compared to the power of two opposing worlds? This is what I want. Thinking of this, Lin Jun suddenly clasped his hands together. He did what he wanted to do. Two powerful universal powers rose from Lin Jun's body. One was the primal chaos energy that Lin Jun possessed. It came from this universe. The other came from the primal chaos green lotus. The overflowing primal chaos energy belonged to another world. In an instant, an intense conflict erupted between Lin Jun's hands. One was stronger, the other was weaker. The two different powers were like a hydrogen bomb meeting a nuclear bomb. The superposition of the two powers far surpassed a real nuclear weapon. Boom! Under Lin Jun's feet, on the wild continent, a huge explosion blasted a huge crater. This crater had a diameter of over 100,000 kilometers, enough to contain an entire Earth. This was the primordial realm, not a fragile planet like the New Territories. If the explosion caused by Lin Jun was placed in the New Territories, it would be enough to destroy the solar system. As for Lin Jun himself, he stood in the sinkhole and laughed heartily. The clothes on his body were gone, and his body was riddled with holes from the explosion. However, his powerful recovery ability did not cause him to die. He was still recovering very quickly. Haha, it really works, it really works. This is the combat skill I want, the combined attack of dimensional forces. Although this experiment wasn't very successful, it proved one thing. At the same time, guiding two universal forces to erupt at a single point could unleash an absolute power. However, it wasn't easy to find a balance point in the middle. It wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. In addition, it was even more difficult to use in battle. It required very precise control. This combat skill was Lin Zhun's original creation. Even if Lin Zhun told others about the combined attack of two-dimensional forces, they wouldn't be able to learn it. This was because Lin Zhun was probably the only person in the entire universe who could open up a new world. Other dominators couldn't do it either. I need time. I need some time to create this combat skill. As long as I learn it, even dominators won't be able to threaten me. Lin Zhun knew that it would be extremely difficult to survive in this life, but he had to survive. This was a life-saving move. He had to learn it as soon as possible. There were still 80 years left. Lin Zhun summoned a thundercloud and flew toward the depths of the wild continent. He had to use the wild continent as much as possible to stall for time. The more time he had, the more hope he had. In the Kingdom of Light, the Radiant Dominator and the two divine angels were setting off from the Divine Kingdom. The divine angel, who usually didn't like to speak, raised her doubts. Master, it might take us a few decades to get from the Kingdom of Light to the wild continent. We might not be able to kill that nameless warrior in time. The Radiant Dominator smiled. You don't know. Because you've only been dominators for a short time, you haven't experienced much. I, on the other hand, have participated in a supreme mission. Oh, there was such a thing? The two divine angels were interested. That's right. The last supreme mission was 20 billion years ago. At that time, I participated in the mission as well. Furthermore, I arrived early, accompanied by a few other hegemons. All of them are current experts, and we even competed fiercely against each other. But in the end, none of us completed the mission. Someone else completed it in secret. The two divine angels asked in unison, "Who was it?" The Radiant Dominator shook his head. I don't know who it was, but I'm sure it was one of the dominators. From that day onwards, I learned that opportunities are given to those who are prepared. Supreme missions aren't so easy to complete. It's not something you could do early. The two divine angels nodded repeatedly. It seemed that the Radiant Dominator was very confident. You don't have to worry. This nameless warrior won't be killed so easily. The person who completed the mission this time is definitely a sovereign powerhouse. The others won't have a chance. What I'm worried about now is those three people. Hearing the Radiant Dominator's words, the divine angels revealed worried looks. Yes, there were only 3 people in the entire universe who could compete. Not even the Radiant Dominator could be considered one of them. One was a human named Jiangnan, known as the mythological Dominator. Another was Lone Star Fisherman, also known as the Lone Star Dominator. The last was known as the Invisible Dominator. He was the most mysterious, and no one knew who he was. In fact, no one had ever seen him before. The reason these 3 were so powerful was because they had reached an even higher realm. Perfection. After becoming a Dominator, one's path of cultivation would not be considered to have reached its end. In the Beast King prison, one could kill Dominator-level demon beasts and absorb their cores, which could continue to increase one's divine power. Only when one's divine power reached a certain level of saturation could one be considered to have reached the peak of the Dominator realm. No one knew how long it would take to reach the peak of the Dominator realm, and there was no proof that anyone had ever done so. However, everyone guessed that these 3 had reached the peak of the Dominator realm. These 3 hadn't fought in countless years, but the Radiant Dominator believed that this time they definitely wouldn't be able to hold themselves back. It was just a matter of who would be able to find a chance to kill that nameless warrior first. But no matter what, the Radiant Dominator firmly believed that this nameless warrior would definitely die. He was facing the most powerful group of people in the entire universe. Chapter 1391. Soon, more than half of Lin Zhun's 8th life had passed. On a mountain peak, Lin Jun celebrated his 70th birthday. In 30 years, this life will end. Lin Jun raised his hands, and 2 waves of dimensional power floated in his palms. In these years, Lin Jun's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. At 70 years old, his godly power had recovered to more than half of his previous life's level, which was 50 million. Moreover, there was still room for improvement in his realm. He was only a peak god king, not yet a quasi-ruler. In this life, his final godly power could reach 100 million. The only thing lacking was that his cultivation of the dimensional combined attack was still unstable. Cultivating a ruler's battle skill was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even with Lin Jun's current aptitude, it was still very difficult for him to completely grasp it in just a few short decades. Up until now, the ruler's battle skill was still lacking one final point, and that was stability during a combined attack. If I want to completely stabilize it, it's no longer a matter of technique, but a matter of tempering my state of mind. Lin Jun flipped his hands a few times, then put them away. His current location was the center of the entire wasteland continent. Only here could he delay contact with his enemies to the greatest extent. However, according to his observations in the dimensional universe, the first wave of enemies was about to arrive. It's been 70 years. Now, the entire wasteland continent is filled with enemies. The first wave of enemies is probably about to arrive. I'll have to spend the last 30 years here. This was a nameless mountain peak. It was as tall as the heavenly gate, millions of kilometers tall. Lin Jun was at the peak, waiting for the enemies to arrive. Strong winds howled above the desert as 3 fleets arrived together. The leaders of these 3 fleets were all god kings, and they were the ones closest to Lin Jun. One was called the Vajra King, one was called the 7-Sword King, and the last was called the 100 Transformation King. Their progress was also broadcasted throughout the dimensional universe. This was because everyone in the universe wanted to know what kind of person the target of the Supreme mission was. Therefore, when the 3 fleets arrived, everyone could see Lin Jun sitting at the peak of the mountain through the dimensional universe. The Lin Jun of this life was 70 to 80% similar to the original him. This made some people feel that it was quite strange, but right now, nothing was clear. They still had to see how strong this person was. The 3 god kings began to communicate through the battleship's display screen. The King Kong King was a giant man who was over 3 meters tall. He stood there like a small mountain. The 7-Sword King was a sage-like old man with 7 swords behind him. The King of 100 Faces was an enchanting woman. She wore a veil over her face, hiding her true appearance. The Vajra King was the first to speak. Gentlemen, we are all well-known people. It's fate that we were able to rush here together and encounter the nameless warrior first. However, I would like to remind the 2 of you that we don't have much time left. The 7-Sword King nodded. That's right. Behind us, there is still a sea of martial artists rushing over. Moreover, within a year, there will definitely be a sovereign, and within 10 years, there will definitely be a sovereign. So, we can't give others a chance, and we can't let others see us as a joke. These 5 martial artists must die in the hands of the 3 of us. Now, the question is, who will go first or together? The Vajra King said to the 7-Sword King, "Then in your opinion, who should go first?" The 7-Sword King thought for a moment. "Why don't we play rock, paper, scissors?" The Vajra King then asked the King of 100 Faces, "What do you think, Sister 100 Faces?" The King of 100 Faces, who had been silent all this time, nodded indifferently. "Okay, you 2 men can decide. I'm fine with anything." "Okay, then let's begin." The 3 of them played rock, paper, scissors across the screen. The Vajra King and the 7-Sword King both used paper, while the King of 100 Faces used rock. Humph! The King of 100 Faces seemed to be very unhappy as she turned around. She was eliminated. The Vajra King and the 7-Sword King smiled proudly. This was something they had discussed long ago. They didn't want to give the first chance to the King of 100 Faces. After eliminating the King of 100 Faces, the 2 of them exchanged a few moves. The 7-Sword King won. "Ha ha ha! I'm sorry, the 2 of you. This is a live broadcast of the entire universe. You can't deny it. I won't be polite then. I'll take this nameless martial artist's life. The Vajra King snorted coldly. Then you have to be careful. The supreme mission isn't so easy to complete. Don't throw your life away here. You don't have to worry about that. Martial artists have to constantly challenge themselves. The nameless martial artist on the other side is just a god king. Do you think I'm afraid of him? The seven-sword king wasn't afraid at all. He raised his hand and said to the people he brought, "All of you, go and test this person's strength." He brought tens of thousands of gods, and the weakest was a mid-level god. There wasn't a single lower god. These subordinates immediately rushed out of the battleship and rushed toward Lin Jun at the top of the mountain like locusts. The seven-sword king unsheathed all 7 of his swords and looked for an opportunity behind. This scene was also live broadcast to the entire universe. The viewing rate at this moment was probably the record since the birth of the universe. Even the fallen star lake, which had been raging with the flames of war, had temporarily stopped fighting. Everyone felt that the supreme mission wasn't so easy to complete. They didn't believe that the seven-sword king could succeed. However, they were also worried that he would really complete it, especially those who were rushing over. On the way, the ruler of light said to the divine angel, "Observe carefully. I feel that this nameless martial artist's identity isn't simple." The divine angel said, "Master, do you think the seven-sword king can succeed?" Absolutely impossible. However, we can at least see the nameless martial artist's weakness through this battle. That's enough. As long as there's a weakness, we can make use of it, the ruler of light said. However, he was increasingly displeased with Lin Jun. This guy, why does he look a little like Lin Jun? Asterisk, 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 asterisk. It wasn't just the ruler of light. Those who were rushing over were also observing carefully. Everyone didn't want the seven-sword king to succeed. However, they also hoped that he could be in a stalemate with this nameless martial artist. In that case, this mission wouldn't be too difficult to complete. The seven-sword king's subordinates whizzed over and instantly filled his vision. Although Lin Jun's strength wasn't at its peak, his 50 million divine power was more than enough to deal with these small fries. I don't want to get too entangled with these people. It's meaningless no matter how many I kill. However, this is my first battle against the entire universe. I have to beat them into submission. That way, there won't be too many flies coming over and I won't even have time to cultivate. Lin Jun had already made up his mind. He had to kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. He still had to cultivate and didn't have time to grind tofu with them. Although my ruler's battle skill hasn't taken shape yet, I have no problem using the power of the dimensional universe alone. Looking at the hundreds of thousands of enemies rushing over, Lin Jun's power of the new dimensional universe appeared in his palm. Chapter 1392. When Lin Jun attacked, the entire space distorted. This move, space collapse, was something that Lin Jun had researched in his spare time after many fruitless attempts to cultivate the ruler's combat skill. His control over the power of space was incomparably profound. When combined with the power of the new universe, it would erupt within the old universe, causing a massive space-time collapse. This was an all-out attack. Given Lin Jun's current strength, anyone below the level of a divine king would not be able to escape from this space. Even quasi-god kings were the same. Only god kings could rely on their formidable strength to survive. Among these several 100,000 people, there was only a single god king. Thus, this move was perfectly suited for Lin Jun. Black energy filled the air. In a second, space cracks covered the entire sky. The entire space was like a block of tofu, and Lin Jun's move cut off a large chunk of that tofu. A massive black hole with a diameter of over 100 kilometers swallowed everyone. The terrifying colors of the different dimensions and the endless turbulent flows of energy caused everyone in the universe to feel their scalps tingle. Many times, a battle would cause a small tear in space, but that was only a small crack that would disappear in a flash. When had they ever seen such a massive space collapse? Lin Jun's move wiped out everyone who participated in the attack in one fell swoop. The martial artists and the gods only had time to let out a howl. They didn't even have time to cry out before they were swallowed up by the space collapse. Space had an incomparably powerful regenerative ability. Even if this 100-kilometer area collapsed, it would return to normal in a second. But those who were in this space would never return. Within 100 kilometers, only the Seven-Sword King stood there in a daze. By relying on his tyrannical god force, the Seven-Sword King managed to escape this calamity. But he was the only one left. Seeing this, everyone watching in the dimensional universe sucked in a breath of cold air. F***CK. This is too ruthless. A single move killed over 100,000 gods. Am I blind, or am I hallucinating? Is there even a chance to fight? Retreat. I'm only at the divine transformation realm. So what are you doing here? I'm leaving as well. Although I'm a lesser god, there's nothing left of a superior god. Although the supreme quest is good, I still need to be alive. My wife and children are still waiting for me. Only god kings and above can complete this mission. The rest of you can go to sleep. At this moment, the various armies that had gone to the wasteland continent had at least turned back. Sure enough, it was a supreme mission. It was not for children to play with. Those who had once thought that their luck would be good and had fantasies in their hearts were all shattered at this moment. As for the sovereigns who could see through this, they were all stunned by Lin Jun's move. What's that? A spatial collapse of such a scale shouldn't have happened. It seems to be a power that I've never seen before. Could this be the reason why the origin of the universe rejected him? I hope these god kings perform well. At the very least, we can see some clues. As long as one is human, they will have weaknesses. I don't believe that this nameless martial artist doesn't have any weaknesses. The sovereigns raised their heads in anticipation, hoping that these god kings wouldn't back down. The Seven-Sword King's subordinates had all been killed by Lin Jun in one move, but he didn't shrink back because of this. To be able to cultivate to the God King level, his mental fortitude was naturally extraordinary. Since he had already come this far, if he didn't go all out, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. After being stunned for a second, the Seven-Sword King launched his counterattack. Since this spatial collapse didn't kill him, it proved that he had the strength to fight. Seven-Sword Flight. In an instant, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and thunder, 7 elemental divine swords gathered to form a huge longsword, which shot straight for Lin Jun's forehead. This move caused many sovereigns to sigh in admiration. The Seven-Sword King was worthy of being called a peak god king. He had actually cultivated 7 elemental powers. This move was probably not something that ordinary sovereigns could block. If one wanted to clash with the elements, they had to cultivate the corresponding elements or elements that countered them. Otherwise, they could only dodge or use their divine power to resist. They believed that this move would definitely reveal the nameless martial artist's weakness. It couldn't be that this nameless martial artist was also proficient in 7 elements, right? He had already cultivated the power of space. So how could he be so heaven-defying as to control so many elements? The elemental powers reached his body and whizzed past Lin Jun. The 7 elements didn't harm Lin Jun at all. Only when the Seven-Sword King's sword was in front of Lin Jun did Lin Jun raise his hand and grab the sword. Crack, crack, crack. With a single hand, he twisted the long sword into scrap metal. Then, he pulled the Seven-Sword King over while his other hand grabbed the top of the Seven-Sword King's head with a bam. No, this is impossible. The Seven-Sword King's confidence collapsed at this moment. He had cultivated 7 elements to become a god. After so many years, he had never met anyone who could ignore all 7 elements. Could it be that this nameless martial artist was proficient in all elemental powers? He refused to believe it and was unwilling to accept it. However, the truth made him feel like dead ashes. Moreover, Lin Jun clearly wouldn't give him a chance to start over. He exerted force with one hand and crushed the Seven-Sword King's head. The nascent soul in his mind couldn't even escape in time. It was destroyed and vanished into thin air. The Seven-Sword King's death shocked the spectating sovereigns. They also came to a conclusion. The nameless martial artist was proficient in the power of space and the 7 elemental powers. These moves were useless against him. They hoped that the next God King would be able to discover this person's weakness. The Seven Sword King's death didn't stop the next God King's determination. The Vajra King was an extremely conceited person. He believed that his strength was the best among the God Kings. Even the Seven Sword King was no match for him. When the Seven Sword King died, he made his move. Roar, roar. Nameless martial artist, don't think that you're a match for me just because you've killed that showy but impractical fellow. You can resist elements, but you'll never be able to resist power. As the Vajra King advanced, his divine body expanded and turned into a giant space beast, a violent ape. A mutated violent ape. This person was countless times stronger than the violent ape king Lin Jun had seen before. He was 10,000 meters tall and brandished his giant fists as he charged toward Lin Jun. This was the embodiment of absolute power. After transforming, the Vajra King's godly power exceeded 20 million. This was extremely rare among the God Kings. Even pseudo-sovereigns weren't a match for the Vajra King. The spectators clenched their fists nervously. They believed that such a ferocious Vajra King would definitely be able to test out this nameless martial artist's strength. The massive fist, which was powerful enough to destroy a planet, was headed straight for Lin Jun. Chapter 1393. The spectators saw Lin Jun stretch out a finger. The Vajra King's aura surged to the sky, as though he wanted to tear Lin Jun apart. Lin Jun stretched out a finger and shot out a beam of light. The faint starlight passed through the Vajra King's forehead. The Vajra King had no power to dodge it all. Poof! The Vajra King's huge head was smashed like a watermelon. Then, he staggered a few steps forward. The huge corpse fell in front of Lin Jun with a rumble. Lin Jun killed the Vajra King in one strike, as though it was as easy as breathing. He raised his leg and kicked the Vajra King's corpse away without a trace. When he killed the Seven-Blade King, everyone had a huge reaction and was in an uproar. But when he killed the Vajra King so casually, the entire scene, including the dimensional universe, fell into a dead silence. The difference in strength was too great. Everyone was a divine king. Why was this nameless warrior so ridiculously strong? Not to mention a divine king, even a quasi-dominator wouldn't be able to do it so easily. The supreme mission was indeed ridiculously difficult to complete. These people were already stunned by Lin Jun. Only the sovereigns watching from the dimensional universes would be able to see the clues. Because the move Lin Jun used to kill the Vajra King was actually a sovereign battle skill. So strong, a divine king can actually use a sovereign battle skill. This guy seems to be even more difficult to deal with than Lin Jun back then. After the Light Ruler saw this, he was also very shocked. He wasn't afraid of elements, wasn't afraid of strong attacks, and was proficient in sovereign battle skills. This guy seemed to have fewer and fewer weaknesses. The Seven-Blade King and the Vajra King can't do it. Their strength is still too low. Only a quasi-dominator can find out more about this guy. It seems that the Hundred Faces King can't go. Her strength is inferior to the previous two. The Light Ruler was very disappointed. This nameless warrior had already shocked everyone with a few moves. The others couldn't possibly have the courage. But he didn't expect the Hundred Faces King to really move. When Lin Jun killed the Vajra King, the Hundred Faces King's body trembled. A gust of wind blew over silently and blew off the veil on the King of Hundred Changes' face. Inside was a beautiful face that was pure and charming to the extreme. You said she was seductive, but her face was as pure as an angel's. You said she was pure, but that delicate and pitiful look could directly penetrate a man's heart, making him involuntarily want to protect her. A pair of beautiful, tearful eyes stared straight at Lin Jun's face. Lin Jun frowned slightly. He was not interested in this kind of woman who was like water. Of course, he didn't dislike this woman's appearance. That was for sure. After all, his aesthetic standards were still normal. Little brother, I'm not your opponent, and I don't want to fight with you. Since you're so powerful, can you help me this once? I'm really at my wit's end. Oh, what is it? Lin Jun stepped forward. The King of Hundred Change directly knelt down. There's an Earth-type sovereign who has taken a liking to me. Lin Jun had already walked in front of her and squatted down. I really don't want to give myself to this person, but who in the world can go against a sovereign? It's not that I'm shameless for speaking so boldly today. It's just that I see a kind of strength, a kind of spirit, a kind of dawn of hope in little brother's body. It allows me to be in a desperate situation. As the King of Hundred Change spoke, a strap on her shoulder unknowingly slipped due to her agitation, revealing a beautiful shoulder. Round as a pearl, smooth as jade, anyone who saw it would feel pity. At this time, some people doubted the King of Hundred Change's words. After all, her method seemed a bit old-fashioned. But at this moment, even if someone thought that she was acting, they would usually calmly watch her finish her act before deciding whether it was real or fake, killing her or exposing her. After all, toying with a beauty was a very interesting thing. With absolute strength at the bottom, what was there to be afraid of? After all, there was no one here who could pose a threat to the nameless warrior. But the result was unexpected. Before the King of Hundred Change could finish speaking, a black ball of evil chi had already enveloped her. Heavenly evil death chi. The King of Hundred Change screamed, swallowing the rest of her words. Why? I'm just asking for your help. Why did you attack me? I didn't want to hurt you. The King of Hundred Change was still trying. Her beautiful face that had not been invaded by the evil chi was tearing up. Lin Jun sneered and pointed to his eyes. My eyes can see all illusions in the world, including whether you are sincere or not. Anyone's acting has no effect on me. Even if that's the case, you shouldn't. As the King of Hundred Change spoke, the skin on her body began to fester. The heavenly evil death chi was too overbearing. Shouldn't what? Shouldn't I be ruthless to you, holding your hand and destroying you? Lin Jun sneered. You are very smart. You know that charm has no effect on people at our level, so you use people's psychology. As long as the opponent is confident and delays a little, they may fall into your trap. Because your body itself is emitting a strange fragrance that can disturb people's minds. Acting is just a way to delay time. The real attack has already been launched. Then why didn't I fall into your trap? It's simple because I have long been immune to poison. Your tricks are useless against me. Any illusion, poison, and other underhanded means are useless against me. Time's up, go in peace. The Lord of Hundred Faces screamed. She could no longer resist the innate baleful death chi. Her body fell to the ground, and the beautiful woman turned into a pool of blood in an instant, vanishing into thin air. With the death of the King of Hundred Change, most of the people watching the battle had completely given up. Previously, there were still some unorthodox people who did not believe in evil and continued to come here. But this time, they all turned back. Immune to poison, able to see through all illusions. Was this guy still human? They couldn't beat him in a fight, and they couldn't play with him. Staying here and waiting to buy a coffin? There were definitely more than 100 billion people in the entire universe who came to besiege Lin Jun, but there were definitely less than 100 people who continued to come here. The rest of them had completely turned into birds and animals and would never come back. Including those who were still alive, they did not care about anything else. They only wished that their parents had given them 2 more legs and were afraid that they would run too slowly. Of course, Lin Jun would not be so bored as to chase after these people. Today, he had taken care of the 3 divine kings and had completely achieved his goal. The miscellaneous people had already left, which bought Lin Jun a lot of time. He could have stayed here and waited patiently for the elites to arrive. Chapter 1394. Without those idle cultivators, the wild continent went from noisy to peaceful. Lin Jun sat alone on the central peak, looking like a statue. No matter how the wind blew or the rain fell, he didn't move an inch. Although he didn't move, he didn't stop cultivating for even a moment. On the 80th year, Lin Jun broke through the God King realm and officially became a quasi-ruler. At this point, Lin Jun's divine power finally made a qualitative breakthrough, reaching 100 million. 100 million divine power below a ruler was unprecedented, and there might not be anyone in the future who could surpass it. However, this wasn't Lin Jun's greatest gain. Ever since the primal chaos lotus had nurtured a new universe, Lin Jun's understanding of all things in the world had reached an extremely profound level. He could sense that the world within the primal chaos lotus was about to break out of its shell. If he didn't break through in this life, he would break through in the next. The power of the old and new worlds began to unconsciously appear on Lin Jun's body, forming one strange scene after another. Just the slightest contact between these two forces would cause the weather to change. The sun rising in the east and the rain in the west didn't count for much. In the area where Lin Jun cultivated, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and other apocalyptic scenes could be seen at any time. Occasionally, streams of primal chaos energy would form a giant curtain in the sky, spinning in the void. Lin Jun was like the core of the universe. His every movement, every breath, could cause the universe to change. It wasn't that no rulers had come in the past few years, but when they saw the situation, they didn't dare act rashly. After all, Lin Jun's immense divine power wasn't just for show. How could an opponent with 100 million divine power be so easy to deal with? Those who could become rulers valued their lives more than anyone else, because in their eyes, their lives were more valuable than anything else. They absolutely couldn't do anything they weren't confident in. Just like that, after the rulers arrived, they all silently cultivated nearby, not in a hurry to attack. The first to arrive was a wood-type ruler, who set up a forest to live in. Then came a water-type ruler, who created a vast ocean and cultivated above it. A fire-type ruler created a volcano. An earth-type ruler came and created a mountain peak. One by one, the sovereigns gathered. Finally, the exalted sovereigns arrived. The first exalted hegemon to arrive was the metal-type hegemon. Metal Dominator Tianhua, known as the man with the strongest attack power in the entire universe, arrived when Lin Jun was 90 years old. Originally, he thought that Tianhua would definitely take action immediately. However, Tianhua did not move. Instead, he set up a sword tomb and stayed inside. Time began to pass again. More and more sovereigns gathered here. There were already more than 40 of them. It wasn't until Lin Jun was 99 years old that a few true powerhouses came. The Radiant Sovereign had brought the second Holy Angel and several other hegemons with him. Aside from the Radiant Sovereign, there was also the Hegemon Sovereign, the Death Sovereign, the Solok Sovereign, and the Freedom Sovereign. At this point, 13 of the 17 members of the Supreme Council had arrived. Aside from the 8 exalted sovereigns, there were also 4 special sovereigns. The universe had 9 special hegemons. They were the Myth Hegemon, Lone Star Hegemon, Fallen Star Hegemon, Death Hegemon, Freedom Hegemon, Saros Hegemon, Solok Hegemon, and the New Sunflower Hegemon. The Fallen Star Hegemon, Freedom Hegemon, Saros Hegemon, and Solok Hegemon were the masters of the 4 great sacred lands. The 4 great sacred lands were the martial arts palaces of the primordial realm, and the 4 great sacred lands hegemons had long since left the primordial realm. They were the oldest group of people in the entire universe. Over the years, quite a few hegemons had perished, but these 4 had always held onto their thrones. The Radiant Sovereign and the 4 special sovereigns arrived together. Upon seeing everyone present, they revealed satisfied smiles. It seems everyone has kept their word. No one has acted on their own. The metal-type Hegemon Tianhua smiled. Since we've reached an agreement, we have to abide by it. The paramount mission isn't that simple, but with everyone's combined strength, there's no reason why it can't be accomplished. I just hope that everyone will keep their word and complete the final distribution. The Radiant Sovereign nodded. Naturally, we'll proceed according to our original agreement. The Overlord suddenly said in a grumpy voice, "What was the agreement? Repeat it again. Why did it have to be in the last few days of the last year? Is this kid worth it?" Haha. Overlord, there is no need to be impatient. I believe that no one has forgotten our agreement. The benefits of this supreme mission are not something that a single person can monopolize. This time, all of the rulers that have come have the qualifications to challenge this nameless martial artist. But the order must be decided by drawing lots. Whoever can kill him will be the one to obtain the supreme reward. Furthermore, the person who obtains the paramount reward must compensate the others with something else. That's the rule. The hegemons all nodded, feeling that this condition was reasonable. Everyone felt that these 5 warriors were a fat piece of meat, but with so many people watching, it was likely that no one would be able to monopolize it. Since that was the case, the Radiant Sovereign's method was still a good one. There were already 48 sovereigns present, which was more than the number of people who had besieged Linjun. The method of drawing straws was very simple. The Dimensional Universe Corporation would act on behalf of the hegemons. It was absolutely fair, and there was no way to cheat. This was because many of these hegemons were also one of the owners of the Dimensional Universe Corporation. The governing body of the Dimensional Universe Corporation was the Supreme Council. The 48 straws were quickly drawn. Everyone chose one at random, and the numbers appeared. When they saw the order of appearance, many of the hegemons sighed in disappointment. This was because the first to appear was actually the metal-type hegemon, Tianhua. The metal-type hegemon, Tianhua, was definitely one of the top 3 hegemons. The metal-type hegemon, the Radiant Sovereign, and the Thunder-type hegemon. These 3 had the strength to fight against a special hegemon, while the others were slightly inferior. Although this nameless warrior didn't seem weak, he still hadn't reached the hegemon realm. If he had faced an ordinary hegemon, he might have had a chance. However, against Tianhua, he would definitely die. It's over. I'm second. I can only watch Tianhua's performance. Well, good luck. He's about to complete the paramount mission. Tianhua's stern face revealed a smile. After all, even a hegemon would find it hard to remain calm in the face of a paramount mission. Everyone, I'm sorry, but Tianhua is about to appear. The Radiant Sovereign laughed from behind. Do your best. Everyone, remember, if the first person doesn't succeed, the second person must immediately follow. You definitely can't give this nameless warrior a chance to catch his breath. All the hegemons nodded. The Radiant Sovereign was truly ruthless. He actually planned to use 48 hegemons to take turns fighting. This way, the nameless warrior wouldn't have any time to rest. Even if he was a peak hegemon, he would be exhausted to death. Chapter 1395. This was yet another unprecedented feat. When they had besieged Linjun, 41 sovereigns had attacked together. Although they had succeeded, they had been criticized. 41 sovereigns against 1 pseudo-sovereigns. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't sound good. Although these people didn't dare to say anything openly, behind their backs, there was a clamor of discussion. Now that there were 48 sovereigns, they could still swarm forward and easily take down this nameless warrior. However, they would probably become a laughingstock, and the supreme mission wouldn't be easy to complete. Thus, this sort of tag team battle was the idea they had come up with. Although it didn't look good, these people had thick skin and didn't care at all. Tianhua was the first to walk out, satisfied. Apart from the 48 sovereigns, there were also 20 pseudo-sovereigns. These pseudo-sovereigns had originally wanted to test the nameless warrior's strength, but when they arrived, they saw a group of sovereigns. Naturally, they didn't have a chance. However, they weren't willing to leave just like that. The pseudo-sovereigns decided to stay and watch the show. After all, watching a battle between sovereigns would allow them to comprehend some things, which would be helpful to their cultivation. Seeing Tianhua appear, everyone retreated. Tianhua's abilities were no joke. He was the most destructive man in the universe. If they got too close, they might be caught in the crossfire and lose their lives. The broadcast began again. After all, everyone in the universe wanted to see the results of such a lively battle. Tianhua strolled through the void. With every step he took, the phantom of a flying sword appeared beneath his feet. He stepped through the air, riding his flying sword. When he arrived 100 meters away from Linjun, he stopped. At this time, it seemed as if Linjun hadn't noticed the arrival of these sovereigns. He continued to cultivate. The clouds in the sky surged, and strange phenomena appeared one after another. Tianhua sneered, then suddenly raised his hand. Hand chop. A hand chop filled with incomparably sharp metal energy, as if it could split the heavens and earth apart directly slicing through space. Unlike Lin Jun, who had used the power of the old and new universes to cause space to collapse, this was Tianhua relying on his tyrannical godly power, combined with his indestructible metal energy, to forcefully slice through space. Although space would quickly recover, the strange phenomena created by Lin Jun's cultivation had completely disappeared because of the spatial tear. Haha, isn't it better this time? The wind is calm and the waves are calm, so you don't have to deliberately mystify things and cause some strange phenomena. You should know that this old man hates people who put on airs the most, especially those who are still putting on an act when death is at hand. Buzz! A 10-meter-long golden energy sword extended from one of Tianhua's palms. The gold was tinged with red, as if it was covered in blood. Nameless warrior, Yang Qi said, "Every time this energy sword of mine kills a god, a drop of blood will gather. Now, the blood in the sword has formed a river. I call this energy sword the myriad deities' tribulation. And your blood, without a doubt, is the most precious blood on this Qi sword. Today, you can hand it over." Lin Jun finally opened his eyes. Even Tianhua couldn't help but be stunned by the cold gaze in his eyes. This person's aura, why is it so shocking? Although Tianhua found it strange, he was still confident in his own strength and did not place Lin Jun in his eyes. Lin Jun finally stood up from the peak for the first time. His body, which had not moved for close to 30 years, stretched. All the joints in his body let out a series of cracking sounds. Looking at the time in the dimensional universe, Lin Jun was shocked to discover that today was the last day of his 8th reincarnation. Those rulers had clearly arrived early, but none of them had made a move. It turned out that they had long since calculated to deal with him on this last day. In less than 13 hours, Lin Jun's time in this reincarnation would be up, as long as he could survive these 10 or so hours. Raising his head, Lin Jun looked at the first light of dawn on the horizon. The sky is about to brighten. Tianhua stood in front of Lin Jun and coldly laughed. That's right. Today is the last day of the Supreme Mission. This will also be the last time in your life that you will see the rise of star. Lin Jun shook off the thick layer of dust on his body and nodded. That's right. This should be the last time. However, this is of my own free will and not something you can decide. Haha, it's been tens of billions of years, and no one has dared to say such things to me. Nameless warrior, your greatest mistake was that you didn't tell me your name. Oh, why is that? Lin Jun asked. Because that way, after you die, no one will be able to find any evidence that you were once alive on your tombstone. In the future, you will only be a wandering ghost. No, you've angered the universe's source and given the supreme mission. You won't even have the chance to become a ghost. Just as Tianhua finished speaking, one of the rulers behind him grew impatient. Tianhua, why are you wasting time with this guy? If you're not going to make a move, I'm going to. Cut the crap. None of you will have the chance to do so. Tianhua finally stopped talking. He raised a single hand, and when he was 100 meters away from Lin Jun, he waved it through the air. As a man with the greatest killing power, he didn't need to use any techniques. He simply waved his sword of energy and sliced through the air, creating a terrifying killing effect. A spatial tear tore open along with his sword of energy, instantly arriving in front of Lin Jun. As long as this spatial tear sliced through Lin Jun's body, he would be swallowed up by the chaotic flow of space. The speed of this sword was comparable to the speed of light. Shwa! A golden ray of sword energy swept past, slicing right through Lin Jun's body. Most people thought that Lin Jun was finished. Tianhua's seemingly simple sword strike actually contained a powerful nomological power. It was his strongest killing move. But Tianhua himself knew that he had failed. Lin Jun had already teleported when he attacked. What his sword struck was only Lin Jun's afterimage. A strand of hair slowly floated down from the air. It was Lin Jun's hair. After all, it wasn't so easy to dodge the attack of a supreme ruler. Tianhua coldly spat out a breath, directly destroying Lin Jun's tumble. You ran fast, but this time, you'll lose more than just your hair. Lin Zhen's teleportation distance was very short. After all, teleporting over long distances required a bit more time. That would be fatal in battle. In front of a ruler, teleporting over 100 meters was suicide. He teleported above Tianhua's head, his hands suddenly parting. Two similar long swords of energy shot out from Lin Zhen's hands. He hadn't used this move much recently, but a useful move would never go out of style. The swords of energy, identical to Tianhua's, slashed through the air. You're not the only one proficient in the metal element. Today, I want to see if you, a metal-type ruler, still have the face to continue sitting on the metal element's throne. Break a single strand of my hair, and I'll take one of your hands. Chapter 1396. An exalted ruler was someone high up in the universe, someone who looked down on all life. In the entire universe, there were only 8 of them. This was Lin Zhen's first time facing an exalted ruler, but he wasn't afraid. No matter who his opponent was, no matter how strong they were, Lin Zhen would never cower because of their status. The metal-type exalted ruler Tianhua's energy sword wasn't his specialty. Back in the day, Lin Zhen had used it to sweep through the primordial realm in Skyfire City. For the first time in countless years, Tianhua felt that his position was being challenged. There was actually someone who could match him in mastery of metal energy. This made him feel threatened. "Brat, you're courting death." Killing intent rose in his heart. Tianhua's metal energy sword met the attack. The two golden sword qis collided with each other. Things like qi swords were very different from real weapons. They could be said to be weak and fragile, and could break at any time. They could be said to be strong and could reform at any time. When energy swords collided, it depended on the user's godly power. The swords sliced through space and collided. There wasn't the sound of metal colliding. Instead, there was a loud bang like a drum. The swords in their hands turned into specks of starlight. Their expressions changed at the same time, and they took a step back. Their swords shattered at the same time. This could only mean one thing. Their godly power was similar. This reality made Tianhua's expression extremely ugly. He wasn't just a ruler. He was an exalted ruler. He had 8 metal-type rulers under him. He stood at the peak of the universe, yet his godly power was on par with someone who wasn't a ruler. How could he have any face left? He couldn't keep a straight face. The others, on the other hand, let out a sigh of relief. Since his godly power was similar to Tianhua's, this mission would definitely be completed. If everyone took turns to fight him, one of them would be able to kill him. Whoa! Their swords shot out at the same time, and they quickly tangled with each other. The weapons clashed, and an intense hand-to-hand combat began. The longer the energy swords were, the more their power was dispersed. Their swords were only 3 feet long. This distance allowed them to maximize their godly power. Lin Zhen's godly power was 100 million, and Tianhua's was about the same. Exalted sovereigns had a minimum requirement of 100 million divine power points. Tianhua was only worth a little more than 100 million, but Lin Zhen's divine power was 100% used, so he could not take advantage of it. If their strength was similar, it would depend on their battle techniques. This was a battle between sovereigns. Countless sword lights crisscrossed, and even space itself was torn apart by their battle. The speed of their attacks could no longer be seen clearly. There were only 2 lumps of snow-white sword light that occasionally tangled together, staggered apart like lightning, and then collided like lightning. The howling blade storm engulfed the surrounding space of several hundred kilometers. The mountain beneath Lin Zhen's feet was continuously flattened. Off in the distance, the other hegemons were watching. Next up was a wood-type sovereign. The ruler's name was Ham, and he was currently muttering something to himself. The third wind dominator Silo asked, "Ham, what are you mumbling about? I hope that Tianhua will be defeated. Furthermore, it would be best if he and this nameless martial artist were both severely injured. That way, I can complete this supreme mission effortlessly." Silo rolled his eyes and began to mumble. "What are you praying about?" Ham asked. "I hope that nameless martial artist will first injure Tianhua, then defeat you before injuring himself. That way, I can sit back and reap the benefits." The two exchanged glances. Neither of them found the other pleasing to the eye. Neither wished for the other to succeed. The fourth sovereign was a fire-type sovereign. He glanced at the two of them and snorted coldly. Idiots. You're both sovereigns, yet you're still praying? Who do you plan on praying to? Is there anyone in this universe who can protect us? Not far away, the Overlord Sovereign laughed coldly. If you don't have a heart of supremacy, you're destined to never reach the absolute peak. Among sovereigns, you're at the bottom of the heap. Ham and Silo didn't say anything, but their faces were filled with shame. Even sovereigns had started out as ordinary people, one step at a time. Not everyone had an absolutely strong mind. However, they still hoped for a miracle. They hoped that Tianhua would lose. In truth, this was what most sovereigns hoped for. At the 15th minute of the battle, something finally happened. Snow-white streaks of sword light rained down on Lin Jun. At this point, Lin Jun had no choice but to admit that fighting Tianhua head-on in this aspect wasn't the best choice. As expected of an exalted sovereign, even with Lin Jun's current strength, he was gradually falling into a disadvantage. By now, Lin Jun had a clear understanding of his own strength. 100 million points of divine power was roughly comparable to some exalted sovereigns. However, his goal today wasn't to defeat a sovereign, but rather to survive. This was the last day of the 8th reincarnation. His opponent had 48 sovereigns. Lin Jun was confident that before all of them finished their battles, they wouldn't group up and attack him. If that happened, it would be hard to tell who would complete the supreme mission. During this process, the non-exalted sovereigns and the non-special sovereigns weren't particularly hard to defeat. The hard part lay in the 8 exalted sovereigns and the 4 special sovereigns. Of the 8 exalted sovereigns, the metal-type sovereign, the lightning-type sovereign, and the light-type sovereign were the hardest to defeat. There were only 7 exalted sovereigns that were truly difficult. If he used all of his ultimate moves, Lin Jun was confident that he could quickly defeat Tianhua. But the following battles wouldn't be easy. Not only did he have to win, but he also had to control the time. As he fought, Lin Jun was also calculating through the dimensional universe. Where were the difficulties and how much time was needed? How long did he have to fight each difficulty? This was the most reasonable and convenient way to stall for time. As long as he could stall for time past today, which was 11 hours, Lin Jun would have completed this life's survival mission. It was all because of the mission issued by the universe's source. It had clearly indicated that today was the last day. This gave the sovereigns time to leisurely plan and make arrangements. This day wasn't so easy to drag on. At 15 minutes, Lin Jun knew that the first battle was about to end. He gathered all of his strength and sent out a sword that shot straight towards Tianhua's face. Unstoppable, combined with his martial intent, this sword erupted with an unrivaled might. Tianhua secretly complained in his heart. Although this nameless martial artist wasn't too old, his combat experience was as if he were an old fox that had been immersed in billions of years. He wasn't any weaker than himself. Although Tianhua was able to gain the upper hand by relying on his attainments in the energy sword, it was still difficult for him to quickly defeat his opponent. But his opponent was clearly going all out. If this continued, it would be difficult for him to obtain the final victory. This would give the people behind him a chance. Tianhua didn't want to be cannon fodder, so he didn't recklessly fight. Instead, he chose to dodge. But he never imagined that he would fall into Lin Jun's trap. The energy sword shot out, turning into a finger midway, Chaos Tribulation Finger. Lin Jun's sovereign combat skill was brazenly used. Tianhua's subtle dodging was the main reason for his defeat. It was too difficult for him to block the finger in front of him. He barely managed to block it, but he wasn't able to completely block it. The energy sword was broken apart by the chaos ring, and his arm was instantly pulverized. I said I would break your arm, so I broke your arm. Tianhua, you've lost. Chapter 1397. The sovereigns were shocked by Tianhua's defeat. Tianhua's defeat wasn't too surprising. After all, a supreme mission couldn't be completed so easily. However, Lin Jun had used a sovereign battle skill. Others didn't know what a sovereign battle skill represented, But these sovereigns knew very well. If one didn't have the strength of a sovereign, they couldn't use a sovereign battle skill. This strength included divine power, battle experience, personal understanding, and many other aspects. Although the nameless warrior in front of them was extremely talented and had the strength of a sovereign before he was even 100 years old, his battle experience and understanding couldn't have been accumulated in a short 100 years. A sovereign battle skill couldn't have been created in a short 100 years. So where did his sovereign battle skill come from? The radiant sovereign frowned. Strange, how did he do it? After thinking for a moment, he asked the two divine angels beside him, "Do you know where this sovereign battle skill came from?" "Master, we've never seen this sovereign battle skill before. It seems to be the first time it appeared." The radiant sovereign shook his head. "Impossible. It definitely can't be the first time it appeared. This person isn't even 100 years old. Could it be that he cultivated this sovereign battle skill in the past 100 years? At the very least, he didn't have this strength in the first 70 years of his life." The radiant sovereign's words made sense. This nameless warrior had reached his current strength in less than 30 years. Could he have created a sovereign battle skill in 30 years? What a joke. The divine angels frowned. "That's right. Where did his sovereign battle skill come from?" "Master, what do you mean?" "Investigate. Investigate immediately. Investigate the recent appearances of sovereign battle skills. Forbidden areas of the universe, specific star systems, the primordial realm, the new territories. Don't miss a single one." The divine angels were stunned. "Master, although there's a dimensional universe, the scale of this investigation is too large. Even if we investigate for 100 years, I'm afraid." "Idiots! Who told the two of you to investigate? Mobilize all the people in the Radiant Divine Nation and start investigating. Investigate one area at a time, one galaxy at a time. There are several sovereigns in the Radiant Divine Nation, and I'll have them investigate as well. They're mobilizing their subordinates, and I believe we'll get results in a short time. After all, sovereigns' battle skills aren't cabbages that can be found anywhere." "Yes, Master, we will do it immediately. There should be. When investigating, we have to focus on the key points." This nameless martial artist used finger techniques. This is a clue. Upon receiving the Radiant Sovereign's orders, the divine angel immediately went into action. The Radiant Sovereign wasn't the only one who had noticed this. The other sovereigns also found it strange and began to take action. They wanted to find out where this nameless warrior's sovereign battle skill had come from. Some people even had a feeling in their hearts that this nameless martial artist's identity was not simple. The investigation did not affect the battle at the scene. Tianhua was defeated, and Ham, who was the second to go up, quickly made his move. However, Lin Jun didn't care about this person at all. Given his current strength as a sovereign, he naturally wouldn't care about an ordinary sovereign. However, Ham had learned his lesson from Tianhua. The moment he stepped onto the stage, he activated his sovereign domain. Lin Jun's domain power had reached the 8th level, increasing his godly power by 80%. His domain wasn't a sovereign's domain, so it was naturally flawed. Although his godly power had increased significantly, it was still suppressed by the sovereign's domain. Ham's godly power of 75 million was actually able to suppress Lin Jun for a while. It wasn't until Lin Jun gradually got used to fighting in the sovereign domain that he turned the situation around. In the end, he used the Holy Land Sword technique to drive the energy sword and defeated Ham. After Ham's defeat, the third sovereign of wind, Cyro, stepped onto the stage. The battle between Lin Jun and Ham was also quickly analyzed by others. "Master, this person's sovereign battle skill hasn't been found, but the Holy Land Sword technique he used just now is confirmed to be from the primordial realm's Soul-Lock Altar Holy Land." The Radiant Sovereign's eyes narrowed slightly. "Oh, from the primordial realm's Holy Land? Could this person be related to the Holy Land?" After thinking for a moment, the Radiant Sovereign raised 2 fingers. Remember this key factor. Don't count the sovereign battle skill on the fingers, but remember the Soul-Lock Altar Holy Land Sword technique. List out all the candidates who fit the criteria. I'll take a look at the list. "Master, there's a lot of them." "Ha! Don't be hasty. This nameless martial artist might not have realized it yet. The more sovereign battle skills he reveals, the closer he'll be to his true identity. As long as I know a few things, I might be able to find an easy way to deal with him. He glanced at the number on his chest. It was number 43. The order of the draw wasn't very good. He had only drawn this number, which was near the back. However, the Radiant Sovereign was very confident that he would definitely be able to obtain the reward for this supreme mission. This was because he was gradually getting closer to the truth. Lin Zhen's battle was still ongoing. Defeating Tianhua and Ham hadn't taken too much of a toll on Lin Zhen's strength. These sovereigns had a fatal weakness, and that was that very few of them dared to go all out and fight Lin Zhen to the death. None of them dared to try a suicidal move. This was the so-called the older you get, the less courageous you become. It was precisely because of this that Lin Zhen was able to fight so smoothly. Silo's level wasn't high either. Although he used his sovereign domain to suppress Lin Zhen, he couldn't truly suppress him. In the end, he was easily defeated by Lin Zhen. After winning 3 matches in a row, his 4th match was against the Fire-type Sovereign Ruler. The Fire-type Sovereign Ruler was slightly weaker than Tianhua. However, he was still about the same as Lin Zhen. Lin Zhen fought with him for more than 10 minutes. In the end, Lin Zhen used teleportation and continuous spatial slashes to defeat the Fire-type Sovereign Ruler. These sovereigns had an agreement with each other. Once they were temporarily defeated, they couldn't continue fighting. They had to give the people behind them a chance. Hence, if they were injured, they basically had to leave. After defeating the Fire-type Sovereign Ruler, Lin Zhen faced his 5th opponent. An ordinary Water-type Sovereign wasn't too difficult. As Lin Zhen saw it, the next difficult opponent was the Sovereign Ruler of Death, who was ranked 9th. The Sovereign Ruler of Death was one of the special sovereigns. He was one of the most powerful people in the universe. He was also the first special sovereign ruler he fought. As for the other ordinary sovereigns, they didn't pose much of a problem. Lin Zhen's momentum was like a rainbow. He used several techniques in succession, such as immovable mountain, unstoppable teleportation, evil spirit all, and so on. He won several more matches in a row. By the time Lin Zhen fought his 8th match, the Sovereign of Light had already received some data. Master, there's been some progress in the selection process. According to your requirements, the soul-locking altar holy landsword art, immovable mountain martial intent, teleportation, unstoppable martial intent. In the last 10,000 years, there are a total of 86 people in the entire universe who meet these conditions. This is the list. The Sovereign of Light received the list from Holy Angel, his eyebrows furrowing. This was because he saw a name on the list. Lin Zhen. Lin Zhen. That's impossible. He's already dead. Moreover, he shouldn't be able to use that sort of finger-based sovereign combat skill. The Sovereign of Light thought to himself. For a time, he was at a loss. Let's wait and see. The Sovereign Ruler of Death is about to enter the stage. If the Sovereign Ruler of Death completes his mission, then all the data I've collected will be meaningless.